Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow underway on this Monday edition, live from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us across the OutKick network. It includes our live stream on YouTube through the OutKick channel there and other platforms, plus this great radio partner you're listening to right now as we kick off the week. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. It's a Monday, but we're bringing Friday energy to this Monday,
right.
And that's what matters, and I am thrilled about today's guest list.
No doubt, football discussion galore. Bobby Carpenter will join us coming up in 20 minutes. Much to discuss on the future of the college football playoff, Jim Harbaugh, and more. Ross Tucker later this hour as well, host of the Ross Tucker podcast. Can't wait to chat with him about his big takeaways from the NFL preseason and the big storylines going into week one, which after Friday, we are, Chad, 16 days away from all of the teams playing. And even closer, 13 days away from that Thursday night kickoff with Kansas City and Detroit. And very special guest, Charlie Arnold from OutKick, will be with us in hour number 2. It was a big weekend, ready to get to the next one.
Hutton, we've got NFL right around the corner.
Yes, we do.
It's a college football game week,
yes,
everyone.
It is.
We've got Navy Notre Dame from Ireland this Saturday. We've got USC kicking off right down the road from us in our studio here in Nashville. You got Vanderbilt hosting Hawaii. Let's get it going
Feels
here.
Great.
This is
Feels
fun.
Right.
This is the time of year that we love. Starting Monday, there's 2 Mondays I love more than any other Mondays. Well, 3. I like the Monday after the Super Bowl when you have that to react to and discuss everything from that. I love the Monday of the first week of college football season when you know you're 3 days away on that Thursday night from a bunch of games. And I like the Monday as you're talking about Selection Sunday, getting ready for the college basketball tournament. So we are a week away from one of those 3 Mondays I love, but we're 5 days away from college football on a Saturday. This is a great time of year.
We may be 5 years away from the Aaron Rodgers retirement announcement. That's where we start with our top headlines.
We can hope.
We've had the annual off-season discussion of Rodgers and where he's going to play. If he's going to be back in Green Bay, if he's going to come out of the darkness retreat and want to play football instead of retire. He has reiterated once again after comments in late July that this is more than just a one-year try it out, go for the Super Bowl or bust mentality for him in New York, where he restructured his contract. He took a pay cut on the front end, a $35 million one compared to the one that the Jets inherited. And that signaled that he was in it for longer than just the fall, the run through the winter and potentially the Super Bowl. Here is Aaron Rodgers via CBS New York discussing where his mindset is with the Jets beyond the upcoming 2023 season.
Being able to win here would be really, really special. But why limit it to one? You know, I don't plan on this being a one and done. So I think we're going to be competitive here for a long time. I'd like to be able to play a few good years here and then hand it right back off to Zach and let him go for the next 15. And it'd be a really special, 18 to 20 year run of great quarterback play.
So that's tongue-in-cheek at the end there. The 3 to 5 year headline comes from this because if you do the math on the next 15 years for Zach Wilson, for him to take over and then have another 15-year run, it would be Rodgers playing for the duration of that time frame. He's playing nice here. He's saying all the right things. I do believe him that it's beyond this season. He wants his legacy to go. He wants to go out with a legacy similar to that of Brady as much as possible, where he goes somewhere and wins, and leaves the team that he was with for the duration of his career, and then goes and has success after talking about having that success with a team that has backed him with a ton of young talent. And if they don't reach that pinnacle this year, or at the start of next year, I should say, in the Super Bowl in Vegas, Chad, I think he will run it back because the majority of this team is young and a rookie contract, and they are extremely talented with a chance to bolster the offensive line a year from now.
Yeah, look, this is the right mindset to have coming into this situation for Aaron Rodgers, because if you're coming into it and thinking, I'm getting older, or I am old as a quarterback right now, which he is.
He'll be 40 in December.
Right. If you come into it thinking, we've got one shot at this and one shot only, I may only have one season left, I think that could harm your play and your ability a little bit if you're Aaron Rodgers. But if you come into it with the open mind, or at least the idea that I feel good right now, I still love the game. I love this young roster. Let's think 3 to 5 years and not 1 or maybe 2 years. I think if you come in with that, and that matters. I believe any athlete's mindset coming into something and the psychology of what they're thinking about what the future could hold absolutely matters for the individual player. And in turn, in this Aaron Rodgers situation, will matter for him and the Jets' fortunes moving forward. But if you go into it thinking 1, maybe 2 years, I think you probably have a tendency to put a little more pressure on everything, every game, every throw if you're Aaron Rodgers. If you're thinking 3 to 5 years, I think that probably helps things for him. So I like this mindset he's walking into this season with the Jets with.
You know what else it does, though, by saying this? It quiets down the questions about if he's coming back all the time throughout the season.
Yeah, now he can just refer back to this quote. And say, I've already said, I'm thinking hopefully 3 to 5 years.
Maybe not even have to refer back to it now. Because
not get asked.
The perception would be, he's definitely coming back. The questions will come up next year, but not this season.
Well, the good news
I
for
don't
all of us.
I don't know if that's the motive of it, but I mean,
look,
if you're asking questions to Rodgers, you don't really have to ask this again.
Well, I don't think it's going to be asked during the season either. The good news is now we're about to have actual games being played, and Aaron Rodgers, I know, is going to play in the final preseason game. So now he'll be asked. All this prelude to the season and a Jets possible Super Bowl run is over. We're talking ball now. We're talking games. He's going to suit up and play in the final preseason game. Clearly, he's going to be there in week 1, and you would hope throughout the entire season. So now the questions Aaron Rodgers is getting is not about darkness retreats this past offseason, who he's dating, or how long he's going to play in the NFL. It's going to be about what happened against the Buffalo Bills in the previous Sunday's game. I, for one, love that. So now it's going to be all ball, all football for Aaron Rodgers. And then once the season starts to wrap up, or if they lose in the playoffs or whenever that happens, one of the first questions, Hutton, we all know this, will be, what do you think about coming back? Are you definitely coming back next season? And you're probably going to get some answer from Aaron Rodgers like, well, I'm going to let this sink in, and then we'll come back and plan all that later. But I like going into it with this sunshine outlook of 3 to 5 years for Rodgers with the Jets. That's the way to go about it.
45. There's a reason he's throwing that out there. And again, we're doing the math there. Also, just quickly, Zach Wilson, he's not waiting around for that. He's 24 now. He'd be 27 at the earliest of this discussion. You don't sit around and wait when you have a chance to go somewhere and compete and play. He started 22 games already in the league. That's not how you get paid to stick around and be a backup when you're the number 2 overall pick in a draft and you have a chance to go and compete and start and make the type of money that others have done. Look at Daniel Jones, by the way.
Well, the
perception
only way,
was he was going to be competing for his job. Now he's got a $100 million contract.
He also went out and earned it and had,
that's
had a great season.
The only way to earn it is on the field, though, which is what Baker Mayfield's trying to do.
Yeah, no, I get it. But Baker Mayfield also had more success than Zach Wilson initially. Look, the only way that he's waiting around is if the market shows him through his agent that no one wants you to compete for a starting job. I don't think that'll be the case. There'll be some dire circumstance across the league where they probably are trying to bring in Zach Wilson to start. But if he gets word back when he's on the open market that no one is interested in him as a starter, only as a possible backup, then maybe he would say, well, I'm kind of happy here now, under Aaron Rodgers, and I'll stay. But I'm with you, Hutton. I don't see that being the case. Someone's going to take a chance on Zach Wilson if, in fact, Rodgers is there 3 to 5 years for him to go in and compete as the starter. Good news for Jets fans, though. No one's worried about Zach Wilson right now. It's all about Aaron Rodgers and this year's team and possibly winning a Super Bowl.
The King of New York, Aaron Rodgers.
King of Gotham.
Yes. Crazy headline. Certainly with the hurricane that hit the West Coast, earthquake, NFL preseason games going on. And then you had the New Orleans Saints, who were holding a joint practice with the Chargers last week prior to the preseason game in L.A. Saints tight end Jimmy Graham arrested after what was a medical episode. Arrested Friday evening around 7:30 local time, Pacific time. Suspicion of being under the influence of narcotics. He was disoriented, wandering in traffic, again, 7:30 in the evening in Newport Beach. And this, while you have the Saints in town, he's disoriented based on seizure, not drugs. Arrested, detained. He was running away from security, and they thought he was losing his mind, out of his mind on a controlled substance. Goes to a hospital and ends up, he was having a seizure. Craziness when you see the headline of arrested after a medical episode. I never thought those two would pair up. In this case, it did. And after practicing Friday morning, he's arrested, appearing to be under the influence, but was having a seizure and didn't play in the preseason game that was that actually kicked off despite the flooding and despite an earthquake earlier.
I feel like this is an opinion for Dr. David Chow to have on this. I have never in my life heard of a seizure to run appeared like I've seen the video in his right mind running straight away from security that was chasing him. I've never heard of a seizure that causes you to just take off running.
I haven't either.
I don't understand what that is. Is there a substance that could cause a seizure like that?
Just said he was disoriented.
Again, I am not a seizure expert. My sister had issues with seizures growing up, and with her it was more of just kind of slumping in her chair and looking very out of it when she started to have a seizure. So I've never heard of a seizure causing activity to this level. I'd love to know more about it. I'm not the medical expert here. I'm not going to spout medical facts ever that I don't know about. I just simply ask the question, has anyone heard of a seizure calling someone to run from security or authorities in any way? That's a question for Dr. David Chow.
Yeah,
we need to get him on the show.
Whatever it was, they released him from the hospital. He's with the team as they took on the Chargers on Saturday ahead of their preseason game that morning. Released Saturday morning with the Saints.
Well, look, it's good to hear he's doing better either way. I'd like to know more about this, but if it is a seizure and it just came out of nowhere and it wasn't caused by something, well, that's reason to doubt his playing at all with the Saints this year if it's a medical condition that just popped up. So, look, I'm fascinated to find out more about what's happened with Jimmy Graham, but this is a crazy story. And when you see that TMZ video of him it seemed like casually sort of jogging as the security guards were trying to get his attention and chasing after him. He's just running down the sidewalk in the video that I saw. Craziest seizure I've ever seen.
Chad, great news involving Isaiah Bolden, who's a 7th-round pick on defense for the New England Patriots preseason game against the Packers this weekend. Fourth quarter, about 10 minutes left, collides with one of his own teammates while attempting to make a tackle on a Packers offensive player and suffers a head injury. He's carted off the field, taken to the hospital, ends up being released and flew back with the Patriots to Foxborough, but they canceled the game at that point, suspended the game, and his players said, hey, this isn't for the AFC Championship game. It's a fourth quarter of preseason game number 2. Let's regroup in the locker room and let's be around our teammate, especially 7 months after what everyone sat and watched with Damar Hamlin and the fear of what could have happened to one of your friends, buddies, teammates, what have you. They are not. The Patriots were scheduled to be in Nashville starting tomorrow for joint practices with the Titans. They're not doing that. They're going to train in Foxborough. They will play Friday night in Nashville as scheduled against the Titans after not playing the remainder of that fourth quarter. But great news involving Bolden. He's with the team. He flew back with the team.
Well, these are the worst. I mean, it makes me immediately think back to the Damar Hamlin situation. That was very different because it was just someone standing up and collapsing, which was far more scary in that way. This was more of the traditional variety of football injury that scares everyone that's watching, where a guy, has an awkward hit around the head and neck area and then just drops with no movement. Always troubling when you see that. Good to know things are developing in the right way or advancing the right way.
And released as quickly as possible.
Yeah. That's always, man, you see those, and you know this, and you've seen a lot of them, even working sidelines at games. But you see injuries like this. I know we've been on television calls of games where there's been long delays for guys who appear to not be moving on the field. And every time it happens, 9 times out of 10, you can hear a pin drop in the stadium, but you're also just really wanting to fast forward in time to where you get a good report.
Or just a thumbs up or something.
Well, I'm always thinking, I'm just going to keep checking back on Twitter or wherever and try to get that good report. Like, I'm really just thirsting for the good report.
You want movement in anything.
And we got
scary.
that. Yeah. We got that with Bolden eventually, which is good news. By the way, our YouTube chat coming through for us early and often already today. Jim writes in and says, I am a nurse, and different kinds of seizures have different effects. Yes, you can be disoriented after a seizure, but running down the street, not sure I've heard of that one before, is what he said. And that's the effects of a seizure. So,
back with the team
there you go.
Saturday morning. He didn't play last night.
That was
though,
a medical
with the Saints.
professional, ladies and gentlemen.
Chad.
Jim showed me his certification on the YouTube chat. So
The professionalism of Jim Harbaugh in question with the NCAA on keeping things out of what is an investigation from the NCAA involving impermissible practices, contact during COVID, and what was allowed, what was not allowed. Michigan is self-imposing a 3-game suspension for Coach Jim Harbaugh, where he's going to miss ECU, UNLV, and Bowling Green. We went through their schedule whenever they were negotiating with the NCAA Infractions Committee for a 4-game suspension, which the NCAA pulled off the table last week. Now, as we start the week prior to the college football season for Michigan, here we are, and they were already planning on Harbaugh not coaching the first 4. Now they're just self-imposing the first 3. We'll pick up there with Bobby Carpenter coming up.
Yeah, and I got way more on this later in a big thought coming off of this. I'll sum it up this way and give you a little preview. Smart move by Michigan. I don't think Jim Harbaugh is going to play ball, though. He's going to be defiant about all of this, and it's not going to be that accepting
Just
of
like
it.
he was with the NCAA.
That's my prediction.
Bobby Carpenter joins us next. More college football discussion on Hot Mic.
Jason Aldean's new song. Jason Aldean's new song, Don't Try It in a Small, Try That in a Small Town, is awesome. It's basically saying to you Antifa clowns out there and you rioters, look, you can go ahead and burn down Democratic-run cities. And the cops, at least in Indianapolis, will be told by alleged drunken mayor to stand down. That's fine. But don't try that in a small town. You saw what happened in Crown Point, Indiana. Crown Point, Indiana, there was rumored that a group was coming in to tear it up. Crown Point's just a little south of Gary. And all the fellas got their shotguns out and lined the streets. Do you know how much trouble there was in Crown Point, Indiana? Bam. 0. Zip. Nada. Liberals went nuts. Oh, this is racism. No, not really. Hey, there's white Antifa. There's black Antifa. You're just protecting your streets. You're just protecting the businesses that you use. See, here in Indy, we did not protect the businesses that we use. We let idiots run wild. We let idiots burn. We let idiots break. We let idiots destroy. That's not the way to go about it. You try that in a small town. Here's what happened in Ottawa Lakes, Michigan, where my wife's from. There was a rumor, group was coming up from both Toledo and Cincinnati. And they were going to go into this gun store and loot it. Word got out. Neighborhood app got started. You know what happened? The fellas, I think it was Ottawa Lakes. There's another town right there. It could be a different town. I don't know. They're all there. You know what happened? The fellas surrounded and protected the gun store. You know the rest of the story, right? The Antifa pussies came up, looked around, saw they were being challenged, and like every single group of bullies, turned around and left. Damn right. That's a small town. And if you think Don't Try It in a Small Town country music, television or whatever is racist, tough. Good for you. We don't. It's number 1 on the charts. And I put out a tweet earlier today of an African-American guy, big, strong guy, that said, hey, don't be coming down here to Alabama. African-American guy. I'll retweet it. Said, don't even think about coming down here and starting that crap. Don't even think about it. Well, guess what? He ain't wrong. It ain't about black or white. It's about protecting the businesses that you use against people that are trying to destroy your town. And Jason Aldean ain't wrong, baby. And you liberals can bitch and whine and moan and write your articles and try to cancel him or cancel me for standing up for it or get mad at OutKick. I don't care. I love seeing what happened in Ottawa Lakes. You want to come in here? Ain't happening. It just ain't happening. Crown Point, Indiana, everybody called them racist because it was white guys with shotguns. You know what they did? They protected their town. I wish we'd have protected our town here in Indy. You go into Indy, it is awful, horrendous, horrific. Nothing going on downtown for the most part.
Bobby Carpenter will join us coming up. I'm not sure if we can be heard or not. Chad, can you hear me?
Anything.
In a moment, Bobby Carpenter will
Now
join us. There we go. Good deal. Good deal. Chad, I don't know if we were the only ones that couldn't hear us or not.
I think it was just us.
Just us.
Yeah.
We're back.
That's normally the case.
We're back. 6th in the Peabody Air location with
It's like
EOB
we
beer
never
and Old
left,
Smoky Moonshine. Bobby Carpenter about to join us momentarily. Chad, picking up where we left off with our headlines of this Monday, Jim Harbaugh, Michigan self-imposing a 3-game suspension. You read into anything of it not just being the 4-game suspension, which they were negotiating anyway?
Yeah, and this is from Brian Fisher, who just tweeted this. Of note with Harbaugh's 3-game self-imposed suspension, any additional punishment on top of that from Committee on Infractions would come in 2024. NCAA enforcement had negotiated 4 games. Game 1 next year, Fresno State. Game 2 next year, Texas. But the whole thing with the negotiated deal was, well, that wasn't going to be good enough because of a lot of the things that Jim Harbaugh was saying.
Or not saying.
Yeah, so...
mentioning the food, but not the infractions on COVID.
But if you remember, that response came because the 4 games wasn't enough.
Well,
so now Michigan's coming back and saying, well, then we'll do 3 games now and see how much they're going to give them next year.
But the response was also in part to how he was reacting to the 4-game negotiation.
Well, it's how it's being covered by Michigan media, too. That was the big thing, was it was about a hamburger.
Right. And that's why the statement mentioned this is not about
which is rare from the
cheeseburger.
NCAA to, in an official statement, comment on media reports about everything.
Bobby Carpenter joins us. He's probably dancing in his home as he learns that Jim Harbaugh is self-imposing, the University of Michigan is self-imposing the 3-game suspension, although the opponents, Bobby, are ECU, UNLV, and Bowling Green, so I'm not expecting them to be anything but 3-0 without Harbaugh here. How are you, man? Good to see you.
I'm doing well, man. I heard you guys talking about that news, kind of just dropped out here, I don't know, about an hour, 2 hours ago, and it's just kind of wild that, you know, Michigan, with as much as they were pushing back on everything, that they would choose to self-impose anything at this point, because that almost looks as if it's an admission of guilt. And if I'm them, I'm just going to roll with this and see what they want to do next year, as opposed to try to placate to them. Because if you look historically, that's never really worked out very well for the schools that are involved.
Let me play the perception card here. I think Harbaugh is going back to the NFL after this year. Personally, just because the NCAA came back and said the 4 games is off the table for now. We'll get together again next offseason or whenever. If you're Michigan, are you simply trying to not have penalties based on Harbaugh's lack of commitment to the investigation, so to speak? They've already got a show cause to the defensive coordinator, who's now the DC in Baltimore with the Ravens, and other coaches have either been suspended or they're expected to be. Is this about Michigan's program without Harbaugh potentially more than it is about Harbaugh a year from now?
You know, that's a really good point, because when we talked about, you know, him kicking the can down the road, it's like, well, yeah, we'll just go to the NFL. And I guess I look at this. I mean, he issued that heartfelt heartwarming statement about his love for Michigan and when he came back after this offseason, after flirtations with potentially going to the NFL, about how this is the place where he wants to be, which, in reality, he only said that after, I believe, he went out to Denver and there was no takers. And so, to me, I'm a big believer, man. What you say is what you are. And I can't believe at his alma mater that he would have said that and made this admonishment of how much he loves the university. And then around the next year when there's stuff closing in and maybe some trouble, and this isn't anything serious with him. He missed 3 games, like they could miss 6. Their schedule lines up pretty favorably for them, this season, that he could miss time and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But the fact that he would say that and then choose to go explore once again, which it didn't look like that was going to be the case. But apparently now, if you look at this and you take it in totality, and like you guys make the great point, well, we'll kick the suspension and everything down the road because I'm not going to be here to ultimately have to serve it, then that's a pretty good situation for him. And maybe that is his ultimate plan. I mean, he has Michigan to where, I guess he would be far more sought after than maybe he was 3-4 years ago. They've won back-to-back Big Tens. They played in the CFP. They've been, much more competitive. And maybe he'll be more appealing now, but he's getting up there in age. And maybe this is his last best shot. I guess we thought last year was. But, you look at everything that he's done now. If he can string together a 3rd consecutive year with a really, really talented team that you take back to the CFP, then, hey, maybe he's got an opportunity there that maybe we're not aware of.
And, Chad, if he just plays ball a little bit here, he's on a 4-game suspension. It's negotiated. It goes away. And now it just continues. Well, and Michigan would have to know that.
Yeah, but, I mean, remember, the NCAA did say in that statement, 4 games, not enough, because we're not talking about just a hamburger here. We're talking about a lot of COVID-19 problems where they were violating dead periods and doing things like that. A lot of the same stuff that happened in the Tennessee case with Jeremy Pruitt is what Michigan's accused of, which I'm sure they're not alone, but they got caught. And, Bobby, I look at this and I think Jim Harbaugh is just not the type of personality to play along with something like this. This is something that, to me, could lead to big issues within that program. Michigan does have the talent, and they've got the schedule and the ability to go win a national championship this year. But I don't expect Jim Harbaugh just to sit back and be some patsy for the university to say, oh, yeah, guys, I committed some really bad things, and I need to sit out these 3 games so I can learn my lesson. I think Jim Harbaugh is going to say exactly what he thinks about it and probably get the football program in hotter water with the NCAA after all of this when he comes back from the suspension. What do you think of Harbaugh's personality compared to what Michigan is trying to mitigate right now with the NCAA?
Well, Harbaugh, listen, he's a good coach. I think he's done a great job. But, right here, it's almost like he's acting like a petulant child. And I get it. If he's principled, believe me, one of my probably best and worst qualities is how stubborn I can be. And, when we dig in, it's trench warfare. And I feel a little bit like that's Jim Harbaugh here. He doesn't believe he did anything wrong. I'm not going to admit to anything. I'm not going to tell you more than I need to tell you. And I know that the Michigan Athletic Department is sitting here saying, hey, you know what? Let's take our medicine. Jim, admit to this. Tell them you're wrong. Pretend to be sorry. Show some level of contrition. And if you do all of these things, it'll all go away. We'll go on with our season, and we'll go try to win another Big Ten championship and make it back to the CFP and see if we can win a national title. Like, all of those things sound good, except for the fact where Jim Harbaugh has to go in there, who's a proud guy and, a little quirky, and say, hey, I'm not going to admit to anything. I'm not going to help these people out. I don't respect them. I don't like them. And I'm not going to make their job any easier because I don't believe I did anything wrong. And so if that's the case, I'm surprised that he's even going to take this right now, or that he's even agreeing to this, because I think one of the things the NCAA wanted was an acknowledgement of guilt, and he would not give that to them. Usually in a plea deal, hey, this is what I'm pleading to. I did this because you were honest and forthright and forthcoming. Hey, we'll back it down a little bit and it won't be as severe. He don't want to admit anything. And so if he's not admitting anything like that, nobody wants to give you the deal. He wants to plead no contest. Hey, I understand there's evidence against me, but I'm not going to admit that I did it. I'm not admitting guilt in this. And I don't think he wants to do that. And I think he has zero respect for the process. And a lot of that probably has to do with, like, what are we talking about? And I get where he's coming from in this, because the NCAA has been viewed largely as a paper dragon. They haven't done anything.
Right.
over the last couple of years, except for the Tennessee punishment with Pruitt, which, you know what, he's not there anymore. We can take a fine, and that looks easy, and it's all well and good. The NCAA feels like they get a win. Tennessee really doesn't get any penalties outside of the financial burden that they have to carry, and so they can keep growing their program. And so Harbaugh probably looks around like, what? You guys are coming at me with everything else that's going on? Forget about it.
So a year ago, for week 0, we had a pretty big thing happen in Ireland. That's where Scott Frost essentially lost his job. And that was the beginning of it when they lost to Northwestern in week 0 in Dublin. Now you've got Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman in his second full season at the helm taking on Navy. Is this a dangerous spot to be in for Notre Dame in this game, flying across the Atlantic to play a game in week 0 against Navy? I know they're a 20-point favorite, but what do you think about this possibly being some wackiness in week 0 on Saturday, Bobby?
Well, Navy's always tough, number one. I mean, anytime you're playing a triple option team, I know they were down last year. I mean, you make a coaching change, you know, maybe they'll be better this year, but they're not a program. Like, Navy's not going and raiding the transfer portal to bring in guys. And so, yeah, there's going to be obviously a talent disparity, but the fact that Notre Dame plays them every year, I think does bode well for them. I don't think this is going to be a situation where it was when I'm watching that Nebraska-Northwestern game thinking, hey, maybe Northwestern's better than what I thought. I mean, I thought Nebraska would probably win 7-8 games this year, and then it turned out that Northwestern wasn't very good. But you know what? Neither was Nebraska. They couldn't close out a game. But I do think this is a little bit dangerous from the standpoint of, you know what, if this game gets a little close, it could get a little squirrely. And the fact that you get that hangover afterwards. Now, they get the week off, the bye week, so they come back, you know, deal with the travel, deal with some of the jet lag, and then also playing Navy. But, you know, if you're Marcus Freeman going in there, there's expectations. And you look at their schedule this year, and I'm thinking, okay, you know, winnable games. Where are you at? You got Ohio State, you've got USC. Those are some tough ones. You start looking around, and they're like, all right, I mean, worst case, you should probably be 9-3. This is when you have to win. You have to look good. You have to begin to build confidence. And if there's any type of struggling there, I think that will be something that people will turn heads, because your first year is your honeymoon. You know, he was the new guy they brought in. He was, you know, getting some things going. They lose to Ohio State. No crime in that. Played a great game. And they lose to Marshall. That wasn't great. But it was an up and down year. They beat Clemson. They lose to Stanford. And I think people want to see more consistency. And consistency is coming out and handling Navy like you should. Because if not, and Sam Hartman doesn't look good, then I think you're going to start asking more questions than there probably will be answers.
Bobby Carpenter with us. SiriusXM is where you can find him. Bobby, so Greg Sankey in a recent chat with ESPN said, hey, circumstances have changed with the college football playoff and what we agreed to last year that we're going to see with the expansion of next season, moving to 12. He was pushing for an 8-team college football playoff, not a 12. He said not everyone would agree to that because you want the 6-6 model, 6 champs and the 6 at large. And he's saying, hey, we need to go back and talk about this now that it's not the same setup as it was. What do you make of his comments, knowing that commissioners are going to be meeting next week in Dallas and then again in Chicago in September?
Well, I mean, the reality is it's going to be him and Tony Petitti that are going to steer this conversation to what they want, because in a 12-team playoff, you would think that probably of the 12 teams, the Big Ten and SEC will comprise at least 7 of them in any given year.
Yeah.
And so I think he looks at this saying, hey, do we want other people in there? Do we even need 5 more? We can go to the 4 power conference champs because the Pac-12 is dissolving. And then we go to 4 at-larges. And so maybe we get, instead of 4 teams in a given year, we may top out at 3, but then we're not sharing the pie with everybody else. And do we really need to make it that much bigger? And I think that's going to be his argument here, where I think he's fine with 12. I think it's all good, but you're not going to have the West Coast presence. There is no Pac-12 anymore, so that's gone. So you can throw that thing out. And to make sure, like, hey, we'll do the automatic qualifiers and different things for the conferences, and that's all good. You know, the 4, maybe plus the 1 group of 5 school. But with that, you know, Notre Dame's probably coming in. But, you know, we want to make sure that you're not capping anything else. You're not changing things, that we have the ability to now get 3 or 4 schools in any given year. Because you look at where the talent base is all comprised, it's really in the majority of 2 conferences, you know, sans Clemson and sans Florida State, which, you know what, those are your main competition in the South anyway. And why would you want to help them more than you already are right now?
Bobby Carpenter at BCarp3 on social. Always great stuff, man. Crushing it on McAfee as well. And football's around the corner, man. Kicking off this Saturday.
Oh, Coach, we're right on the precipice of it. This last weekend was great because I had no commitments. I got to relax, hang out, have some wine at night, drink by the pool during the day. And now I'm just staring down the barrel of the next 8 to 9 weeks coaching my kids. There's high school football. We've got college every week, NFL. It's going to be great. And believe me, I'm excited for it. But it's almost daunting and exhausting thinking about it.
Yeah. You go with a cab or what do you go with?
You a Merlot guy? You're a red guy, right?
I'll drink some white during the day, but at night, I'll drink some Cab, a little Pinot, little Merlot. I used to drink that probably 7 or 8 years ago, and I've migrated more to the Cab and the Pinot now. So that's what we're having. It was really cool, and it was nice to be able to drink here the last couple of days. Now the Midwest is like it's turning in the South. It's like the devil's lair with the humidity and the fact that it's 90 degrees.
Water is the drink of choice with this heat right now.
Hydration is key. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you guys.
There's Bobby Carpenter.
Thanks, Bobby.
Next time we talk to him, college football will be underway.
Bobby's just like me in coaching his kids that during football season, what you do is you get the schedule and you immediately pray for 9 a.m. starts.
Oh.
So you can be done and then go home and watch football.
That's too late now.
And I got a couple 9 a.m. Softball games in there, so that's the best one to get in the fall.
I want to get back to this Greg Sankey discussion because he's talking 8. I think the discussion should be 16 as how you get everyone involved. When we come back, Ross Tucker will join us, host of the Ross Tucker podcast. Running backs, they're showing up to their teams after trying to hold out. That's next.
Two biggest social media giants, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, are set to battle it out, and I'm here on Broadway asking people who they put their money on. Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, they're going to fight each other. Who do you think's going to win?
I think Mark's got him.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Because he's a man.
Okay, and Elon Musk isn't?
Oh, well, of course, he's got money.
Okay.
He's got money. Money, well, money's money.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg in a fight?
I don't know. I'm going to go with Musk.
Why?
It just seems like he's a little bit younger, a little bit smarter.
You just got a good feeling about him?
I got a good feeling.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Musk.
Why?
He trains. That guy's going to beat his.
But Mark Zuckerberg is actually training jiu-jitsu for 9 months.
Not happening. Elon Musk all day. Elon Musk.
Why do you think?
He has no soul. I mean, I think he's definitely just going to no holds barred.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. I feel like he's stronger and smarter.
Oh, Elon Musk.
All the way? Why?
All the way. He's an animal. Think about it.
Mark Zuckerberg's been training for 9 months jiu-jitsu. You think Elon Musk can take him?
Yeah, I think he could take him.
Elon, that oh God, stop playing with Elon. Elon really do this out here, for real.
I hope Elon
Really? Why do you think so?
got better ideas.
Zuckerberg's like 5'7", 155. Musk is 6'1", 190. But Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, who's going to win in a fight?
Oh, Elon Musk. No doubt.
Why do you think so?
He's the GOAT. I've been seeing all the Twitter handles and all the talk, and I'm on Elon Musk's side. I'm ready for them to get in the WWE ring and then come off the top rope. That's what I want to see. I want to see a people's elbow to Mark Zuckerberg.
If one was more likely to be a lizard or a robot, who would it be?
Elon.
Okay.
I think Mark Zuckerberg will win.
Why do you think that?
Because I think he already trains MMA. So he's got like the prior experience and stuff. I mean, they're both billionaires, so they have the opportunity to get the best training. But I think Mark Zuckerberg will pull away with the win.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think so?
Because he's bigger.
Bigger, okay, but Mark Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Do you think that matters?
No.
Zuckerberg, he's part alien or robot, so he may have some secret powers that we don't know about.
I was going to say, is that an advantage? Does he have an advantage over Elon Musk then?
Yeah, I mean, if he, sheds his skin and becomes an alien and eats everyone, yeah, I think so.
Elon Musk is mental, so Elon Musk.
All it is just he's mental. He's mentally crazy, so.
He just wouldn't care, would he?
Okay.
He'd just absolutely go for it. I think Zuckerberg would be a bit more refrained.
Okay.
If that should ever happen, which I doubt, but you never know, it'd be entertaining.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Elon Musk.
Why?
Because my dad is in love with Elon Musk.
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to go with Zuckerberg. I mean, Threads just came out, so.
Who do you think would win?
Zuck.
Why do you think so?
Because he's not a real human. He's a robot.
So he'll use that to his advantage.
Yeah, and all the Krav Maga stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah. Who do you think would win in a fight, Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk?
Elon Musk.
Why do you think Elon Musk?
I think Elon's
He
smarter.
works with robots, so maybe he built a robot to fight for him.
But what if Mark Zuckerberg is a robot?
Oh, wow.
Then I might have to change my answer.
Who do you think's gonna win?
Me.
OutKick's Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Our thanks to Bobby Carpenter for joining us, talking college football. Time to talk some NFL. Chad, you know who is the host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast?
I'm going to guess. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's the one, the only Ross Tucker.
It is. Ross Tucker joins us at Ross Tucker NFL.
Nailed it. 1 for 1.
A very great podcast at that. Ross, good to have you back on the show, man. Hope things are well.
Likewise, always good to see you guys, talk with you guys, and yeah, I made it the Ross Tucker Football Podcast just in case I want to get into the Ross Tucker Chess Podcast at some point.
Well, it's also
or the
good.
Ross Tucker Barbecue Podcast. By the way, I'm coming down to you guys this weekend. I'm in the booth.
Okay.
At Vandy, Hawaii,
awesome.
at Vandy Saturday night. So I'm coming down to Nashville.
Are you getting in Friday or Saturday for the game?
Late Friday night because
okay.
I'm going to be at the Jersey Shore with my family, and then late Friday night I'll be there Saturday. It's a night game, and then first flight out Sunday morning. But I keep looking at these pictures of Vanderbilt Stadium. I'm like very intrigued by this.
Arrive early.
Can you call some of the game, like the second half, from the dirt pile in one of the end zones? Like that would be a broadcasting first. That I'd pay to watch that.
You know what? I'm in the booth. I don't know if they have a mic or a headset on the sideline, maybe to interview a player after the game. I'm doing the radio broadcast nationally for Westwood One, but I think that's actually not a bad idea. I mean, if we're trying to go viral here, why don't we just give me a beer, let me sit in the dirt pile and see how that goes?
I love it.
Yeah, but hopefully the score doesn't dictate if you're up in the booth or in the dirt pile. Let's put it that way. Entertaining game first. Ross Tucker with us. Ross, so Josh Jacobs is reportedly going to head back to Vegas to be with the Raiders. Surely this means he's playing week 1, although who knows with the storylines there as the Raiders play on September the 10th. What I do know is Jimmy Garoppolo gets a lot of praise for the win-loss record under his resume. He normally has a very strong run game to support what he does as a quarterback. Josh Jacobs is desperately needed for Josh McDaniels and Jimmy G.
Well, I got a lot to say about this one, okay? First of all, he was never going to miss a paycheck. None of these guys were. It's $561,000 a week for Josh Jacobs. I've seen these reports today, guys, where Josh Jacobs is gonna report by the first game. Yeah, no kidding. I knew that. But what I suggest, and what I would do if I were Josh Jacobs and if I was representing him, I wouldn't sign. I have to check if it's Friday or Saturday, but I wouldn't sign until the last possible second for you to still get your pay for that week. Because I saw a quote from Josh McDaniels where he said, man, it's hard to just come in at the last second and play to the level you want to and play well. Hey, Josh, that sounds like a Raiders problem, not a Josh Jacobs problem. If the Raiders don't entice his one-year offer like the Giants did, and hopefully better than the Giants did, and he doesn't show up till the day before the first game, well, then really it puts the Raiders in an uncomfortable position. Are you going to play him the next day or 2 days later? That sounds like a major injury risk. And by the way, then he will have missed all of the game planning that week. And then even the next week, he's probably on limited touches. So if you're the Raiders, I think you have a decision to make. I think they need to try to entice him, whether it's a little bit more money on the 1-year deal or agree to not franchise tag him again to get him in sooner rather than later. Because I think what Josh McDaniels said is probably right, but that's not Josh Jacobs' issue. Josh Jacobs probably would prefer if he had less touches the first couple of games because that doesn't help a running back anyway. Then they just blame you for all the touches you had the year before.
Ross, can you help me understand the Colts' decision to play Anthony Richardson in preseason week 1 and then sit him in preseason week 2? It seems this is a guy that needs as many reps as possible getting ready for his first season, his rookie season as the starter.
No, I don't understand it. Unless it was a health thing for the starting offensive line, right? So if they didn't want to put the starting offensive line out there because maybe they had joint practices last week, I don't know. But I know Steichen a little bit because he was the OC in Philly the last couple of years. I do the Eagles preseason games on television. And if the Eagles have those joint practices, a lot of times they don't then play their starters.
The Colts did
in the
too,
game
I believe.
Because they think
they played the
it's too many reps.
Joint practice against the Bears, I believe.
Yeah, so my guess is they didn't want to play the starting O-line. And if they didn't want to play the starting O-line, you certainly didn't want to put Richardson out there behind the backup O-line. So that would be the logic. But I would agree with you that I would at least have gotten him a few series. You look at his footwork, mechanics, he really does need as much work as he can get. So that's the balance I think the Colts are going through, trying to get him the reps that they know he needs versus not wanting to beat up, Ryan Kelly and Quentin Nelson and some of the starting offensive linemen who they probably don't think need to be out there.
Just in general, the idea that you don't start a rookie quarterback if the team around that player is really bad because you don't want to hurt their confidence. I don't like that way of thinking when you've got a first-round quarterback that you're trying to see if he's the guy or not. But do you buy into that in certain situations with certain quarterbacks?
I think it has, in my mind, less to do with the supporting cast and more to do with the player himself, right? I'm kind of the mindset that I would play the guy unless he's just really not ready to the point where he's going to significantly hurt the team and maybe himself, right? Like if it's a guy that maybe only played 1 year in college and he's a little bit overwhelmed. I thought a good example of this, to be honest with you, last year was Malik Willis for the Tennessee Titans. I mean, he was nowhere near ready to be out there last year, really hurt the team, hurt himself. And so he was an example of a guy that really, I think, probably could have used a year, and he looks better. Malik Willis looks better this preseason. But if the guy doesn't know where his blitz pickup is, and he's going to have guys coming free, and he doesn't even know it, he's going to get ear-holed, that's not good. Other than that, I don't think it's a supporting cast. I mean, the team could be dog crap around him, but if he knows what he's doing and he knows to get rid of the ball, then I would play him.
Guy played 13 college games, started 13 college games, and he was making his debut at home, too, for the fans of the Colts that wanted to see him play.
Well, the comparisons, the last guy to start that few games and going very high in the draft and starting right away was Trubisky with the Bears, and the last quarterback to start right immediately that had that bad of a completion percentage was Jake Locker with the Titans. That's who Anthony Richardson, those are the comps right now in terms of starts and stats in his college career.
Ross Tucker with us. Ross, year 2 jump for Kenny Pickett and for George Pickens will be what? How high is the ceiling in year 2 for these two players?
I think pretty high. I mean, I actually just wrote an article last week for the 33rd team about second-year breakout players. I think it's Pickens for sure. I still need to get more information on how he went in the second round and all those guys went ahead of him. I know he had some off-the-field stuff and injury stuff, but goodness gracious, guys. I mean, that is one talented young man. It's unbelievable, by the way. Like the Steelers, they can't keep getting away with this. Like every receiver they take, every edge rusher. I saw Nick Herbig just murdering people over the weekend. I mean, there's certain positions where if the Steelers draft you, you're pretty much going to the Pro Bowl. I mean, it's unbelievable how they keep doing this. But yeah, I was impressed with Pickett last year. I really was. You know, to our conversation about rookie quarterbacks earlier, he just looked like he knew what was going on. It just looked like the game wasn't too big for him. And I saw him have game-winning drives late in games a couple of times, which I thought was a really good sign. And I would like to think that they'll use Pickens downfield more. They've got some really good weapons. I mean, Deontay Johnson and Pickens and Freiermuth and even their backs are looking pretty good. I think the Steelers, I mean, they were 9-8 last year. It's hard for me to imagine them being any worse than 10-7, although their division, in my mind, is the toughest in football.
They're not having a losing season. I know that based on Tomlin being their head coach. Ross, final thing for you. If the Steelers are underrated, I think they are going into the year. Who's the most overrated team right now in your mind?
Well, I don't know if it's overrated as much as overhyped right now. But guys, when's the last time we talked this much about one team going into a season and that one team hasn't been in the playoffs in 11 years? I mean, I'm talking about the New York Jets. And I totally get it. They got Aaron Rodgers. They got some other guys. They're on Hard Knocks. I get it. But, man, I don't know if they're overrated, but there's sort of a presumption that they're going to the playoffs. And I would just say, you sure about that? I mean, their O-line does not look good. And go through and pick the 7 AFC playoff teams. It's rough. I did it in my predictions for the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, and I had to leave out some really good teams. I left out 10-7 Cleveland. I left out 9-8 Baltimore. I left out, I think, 10-7 Miami Dolphins. I mean, the AFC is just loaded. It could very easily be the Jets that have a nice season at 9-8, 10-7, but aren't able to make the cut and making the playoffs, which would obviously be gigantically disappointing for what the expectations are now.
That would certainly make the front page story. Ross Tucker with us. MyFrontPageStory.com. Why is MyFrontPageStory.com the best gift ever, Ross?
Well, so I talked to you guys about this at the Super Bowl, right? And evidently, and you got to tell me, is this even going on in the South? Because evidently the two biggest months for weddings are September and October, which blows my mind
It's
away.
avoided here.
Yeah, well, which means, by the way, what that means is a lot of people have their anniversary coming up and they have no idea what to get their wife. So just go to myfrontpagestory.com. They literally write this unbelievable story. Looks like it's on the cover of the newspaper, framed pictures of her and you. I'm just telling you, she will cry. She will love it. It'll be hanging up in the house. And maybe that's what you need to do to make up for the fact that you got married during football season. I mean, I had at least 3 buddies while I was playing that got married during football season. And you don't realize this at the time, but when you're in your 20s, weddings are like gold. You know how much I would pay right now to go to a wedding when I'm 26 years old? I mean, are you kidding me? And yet Eric, George, I can go right down the list of my friends that got married in the fall. And I would say something to them about it, and they'd be like, dude, she wants to get married in the fall. It's her dream. To which I said, like, what's more important, your wife or me? I've known you since we were 5. You just met your wife like 3 years ago. It didn't go over very well.
He needs to get you the myfrontpagestory.com headline then.
Yeah, they need to make up for it. Give me a story about why they're not close enough friends with me. Myfrontpagestory.com.
You're right, too. There's also all those like very early August weddings to avoid the football season. That's happening right now with anniversaries. So those are the smarter friends, the ones that we all like more. We're the ones who got it out of the way then, before games kicked off.
Yeah, I mean, I laugh at people that get married in the fall and they're like, oh, I didn't know Penn State, Ohio State was that day. Well, when nobody's on the dance floor because they're all in the other room watching the TV, congratulations. You just sabotaged your own wedding. You just committed wedding suicide.
Ross Tucker is the host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Ross, always great, man. Great to have you back on the show. We'll do it again soon.
Of course. See you guys. Let me know a good breakfast place for Nashville Saturday morning.
We got you.
I'm going to brunch with a guy. Give me a good place.
We will hit you up for sure. Thanks,
Love
Ross.
it. Thank you.
The Ross Tucker Chess Podcast also coming soon. We found
Maybe they're
going to
tape it at brunch.
Some breaking news. Yeah, that could launch in the construction area at Vandy since he's going to be there at the game. They could set up some chess.
You can find some good a good brunch on West End.
Oh,
there's
some good spots in Nashville.
Chad, coming up, I'm very high on what I've seen from Pittsburgh. No one's really talking about the Steelers coming off the 9-8 season, year 2 for Pickett. George Pickens has been incredible, and there's an area of Pickett's game that has vastly improved from last year at this time to now. That's why I'm buying into them. I've got 2 others that I'm buying in on the hype of the preseason. And then there's headlines and storylines that I'm selling based on camp situations going into week 1. That's next right here on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I just think the way Anthony Bass handled this was so sloppy.
Oh, I think it's perfect.
And what he reposted and how
he bent the knee and bowed. He was going to catch the ceremonial first pitch.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
When you're behind closed doors, when you're talking to plant managers, when you're having meetings, when you're with the team, was there an acknowledgement of any of this, an acknowledgement of the situation, the boycott, and then the doubling down about moving away from the fratty image?
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people. I'm pissed off about this. I never did it before in my life, but Trump is being cheated. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Old taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the second hour is here on the Monday edition of Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. 6th and Peabody, our broadcast location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Our thanks to Bobby Carpenter and Ross Tucker for joining us earlier. And we've got plenty to discuss with Chris Balas, who is with On 3 and covers all things Michigan Wolverines. He'll join us coming up in an hour, and had the story for On 3 regarding the 3-game self-imposed suspension from the University of Michigan and their athletics program for Jim Harbaugh for the first 3 games of this upcoming season. And this stems after last week, where we found out the NCAA is taking a step back to reevaluate how they're going to handle Harbaugh in Michigan next year, because they weren't going to agree to the negotiated and reported 4-game suspension to begin this season for violating policy during the COVID-19 restrictions, and not admitting it, instead saying that coaches bought a hamburger for a recruit.
Yeah, this has become a contentious investigation between the NCAA and Michigan. Juxtapose that with what happened at Tennessee, where Tennessee just turned total state's witness immediately, fired everyone involved, knew they had a lot of bad stuff on them that they could easily prove by going through text messages and everything else. And they embarked on a long process with the NCAA that ultimately produced the biggest fine in the history of the NCAA to Tennessee. It was not nothing that they got. They got a lot of scholarships reduced also. But Tennessee self-imposed scholarship reductions, and they did other things to mitigate what? A postseason ban, which did not happen. They paid a lot of money. They lost some scholarships. They fired all their coaches, but they did not receive a postseason ban.
And, Chad, imagine what that would have meant going into this year for that roster in Knoxville. You know, they're thinking bigger than just let's play on New Year's Day internally in the locker room. So you've had the postseason ban. How do you react to that internally? Now, because of the way you handled and the way you cooperated, you're not faced with that.
No, and that's, but getting back to Michigan, that is what Michigan's gone about this a little bit the opposite way.
Right.
And it's the biggest part of it is because Jim Harbaugh is not going to play ball with the NCAA. He's not answering their questions completely. Him and the Michigan Athletic Department has spread this whole thing about it was a question about a cheeseburger and who paid for it with the recruit that was in town. And then the NCAA heard that so many times from so many different outlets, they had to fight back in a statement and say, this is not about a hamburger. This is about multiple violations, a lot of them involving COVID-19 restrictions that were violated by Michigan that they can clearly prove that they're saying this. Also, Michigan in doing this, you know what they're saying? Yeah, they can prove it. We've got the info on what Jim Harbaugh was doing with practices and recruiting visits and everything. They can prove this part of it.
But it's up to a 6-game suspension for not helping with an internal investigation from the NCAA. That's what they were negotiating with Harbaugh. The coaches that were violating the policies either received a show cause, and they're no longer with Michigan. They're now the defensive coordinator for Harbaugh's brother, John, in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Or there's another offensive coach that's involved. Harbaugh would just simply be restricting access or not being forthcoming with details that he may or may not have been a part of. But that's more or less where the suspension would be stemming from, not actually violating specific policy on his end. So, is he cooperating? Is he not? He was saying, I don't recall. That was the quote.
Yeah,
I don't recall.
Regardless, they tried to say 4-game suspension. The NCAA said that's not enough based on all this. So Michigan's initial response was, and at least this was what was reported. I don't think they officially said this in a statement. Well, he's not going to serve any suspension this year. So they're just going to play it out and see what the NCAA does. I think that would have been a mistake. What Michigan is doing now is the right thing to do. Yeah. Now, I would go ahead and go with the 4-game suspension you proposed in order, because there's no really tough games in that 4-game stretch. Go ahead and go with the 4-game, and then the hope is you get time served a year from now. So then when the NCAA comes back and says, what we were thinking was more appropriate was half a season, 6 games. So now you sit out the first 2 games of this season. And if it's a 6-game suspension, their second game of next year is against Texas. So that would be pretty brutal for Michigan. This in the statement from Michigan, from AD Ward Manuel, this just dropping. says that the matter is still ongoing, but the 3-game suspension is, quote, our way of addressing mistakes that our department has agreed to in an attempt to further that process. Again, Michigan is not saying that we're saints here. This is now Michigan owning up and saying, yeah, it's more than a hamburger that Jim Harbaugh said, that whether or not he paid for or not. He's saying there are mistakes made that we've owned up to, and this is in an attempt to further that process. I think this is smart business from Michigan. They're not going to miss Jim Harbaugh that much in these 3 games. They should roll in all 3 of them. And the hope is Jim Harbaugh is your coach again next year after Michigan has a great season, and he comes back and maybe serves another game or 2 when this is all said and done. To me, that's best case scenario at this point. Hutton, I think if they would have continued to be this defiant and Harbaugh would continue to be this defiant, which, by the way, he may still be, and they said no suspension in 2023, I think that would have led to bigger problems from the NCAA. And I'm not saying that's right. I think the NCAA is petty. I think the NCAA is very insecure about their standing, and they've always been that way. So when they get the chance to drop the hammer on someone that's uncooperative, they tend to always do so. So even if Jim Harbaugh doesn't want this, and he is being a child about it, this is Michigan saying, we're going to go ahead and fall on the sword for 3 games in hopes that it leads to almost nothing a year from now.
Well, and what it is, too, it's really not that heavy-handed, even from what they were negotiating. The level 1 violation was just by not cooperating with an NCAA investigation. It wasn't that he directly violated a major rule. People on his staff did. But the potential level 1 violation for failing to cooperate with NCAA enforcement staff. Additionally, the program faces 4 level 2 violations, which are less significant in scope. And then if you consider what the 4-game suspension would have been, it's only on game day. He still coaches during practice. He's still allowed to contact coaches, players, the university. He's still in his office every day. He's just not coaching on the sideline on game day. That's all that would have been. And from Michigan's stance, Chad, I think this is also about just making sure you're in the right spot with the NCAA from the perception of the university athletic department compared to whenever Harbaugh bolts for the NFL a year from now, which he's flirted with the last 2 years.
I don't think there's any way to fully win if you're Michigan. And here's why. Jim Harbaugh is going to take this as a slight. There's no doubt about it. He thinks that his university is throwing him under the bus right now. That's the way he's going to view this. Watch Jim Harbaugh and how he operates. Watch how he speaks to the media. Watch how he talks about football. Watch how he talks about life. Watch how he talks to his team. He's not going to take this sitting down. To him, this is a huge level of disrespect from his own university. I think it's a smart play because now you're going to mitigate further damage a year from now. Jim Harbaugh's not going to see it that way. He's going to see this as his university rolling him under the bus, and he doesn't think he's been wrong in anything that he's done or what's gone on. But if you don't do it, Hutton, the problem is, okay, well, now a year from now when they talk about a season-long suspension because we did nothing as a university, he's just going to bolt for the NFL. And we're going to lose our coach altogether.
And why we haven't heard from Harbaugh is his attorney is saying he can't do that based on the internal operating procedures of the NCAA. Because that could be more penalties for Michigan because the attorney, Tom Mars, says, quote, Michigan, the involved coaches, and their lawyers are prohibited from uttering a word about the ongoing case, yet the NCAA can issue a public statement putting its spin on the case. That's what he's tweeted about, too. And Harbaugh did say at Big Ten Media Days, hey, now's not the time. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Now's not the time to lay it all out there, but I wish I could. So you're right. He has definitely something to say. We'll have Chris Balas on from the Wolverine with On3.com coming up in a little under an hour. We'll ask him directly about Chad's theory with all this, which it could absolutely be spot on behind the scenes.
Well, one thing about
and we know President Santaono has Harbaugh's back. Those others within the department, who knows?
Well, one thing about the the NCAA can comment in their statement about what it's about, but they can't. I understand that. I think also the NCAA is saying you've been putting this out there. And when you go at Big Ten Media Days, and I really want to talk about it, but I can't, they're not allowing me to, the NCAA takes everything as disrespect to. Basically, you've got two sides right now that are being very defiant about being right. And there's only one group that's right here, and we don't know who that is, but neither side's really backing down. Michigan's the one that's kind of playing mediator between Harbaugh and the NCAA at this point, saying, all right, we'll do this, but not this.
Yeah, unless, and again, it's just a theory, unless there have been talks behind the scenes, because the NCAA did accept one-game suspensions for the other coaches on the roster, other than, those who have departed for the NFL over the offseason. So if you've had other chats about that and you say, okay, self-impose, then self-impose. But again, 3 instead of 4, a lot to discuss coming up with Chris Balas. Chad, maybe Harbaugh's taking over for an NFL organization a year from now. Plenty of storylines out there this time of year in buying and selling the hype. And I said, and we were stating our case for coaches in college and where they may end up. And I mentioned, Ryan Day makes a ton of sense to me in Chicago. Former Ohio State quarterback, Justin Fields is there. And I'm buying the hype on Justin Fields and all the discussion about him this offseason. I don't think there's going to be a coaching change because Fields is going to play so well. The Bears are all in. They should be. He's speaking like a leader. He's very confident. Now is the time for Fields to have that Jalen Hurts jump. Hurts last year averaged last year and the last 2 years, he's averaged 770 yards rushing. He has averaged nearly 12 touchdowns combined over the last 2 years. And now we have Fields, who has rushed for nearly 1,500 yards a year ago, and they're layering a passing game onto that attack, finally, with DJ Moore. They have a number of guys in the tight end room, including adding Robert Tonyan. Khalil Herbert came onto the scene last year. Deontay Foreman is now in Chicago in the backfield. Now is the time, with all of the free agency acquisitions, the money they've spent, the trades down from 1, showing that they're all in with their guy, and getting DJ Moore in the process of that swap. Now's the time to take a big leap. And based on all the reporting, he looks a ton better in that area, in the passing game. If he puts things together, Chad, is he taking Chicago to the Super Bowl like Hurts? No, I'm not saying that jump. But should it be playoff worthy, in contention, the way we've seen the Falcons, for instance, in the NFC over the last couple of years, having no business being around that 7th seed? Yes, that's where Chicago should be, especially with Aaron Rodgers in the AFC.
If anyone deserves a good franchise quarterback, it is the Chicago Bears. They have not had good luck in that department over the years, so I'm rooting for Justin Fields. I hope it works out. I'm a little bit more skeptical than you until we get into the regular season, but this preseason, there has been a sizable jump up.
I think he's extremely talented. I'm very eager to watch him. 2 receivers also I'm buying in on. Jackson Smith and Jigba. He is tearing it up in the preseason. The stats jump off the page. Now, he's doing it against primarily backups. He's the third option, though, in Seattle. He's playing alongside DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. His approach to the game reminds me a lot of A.J. Brown. No nonsense, chip on his shoulder at all times. He is going to be a problem. Same for George Pickens. I could describe him the same way. And with Pickens, I'm buying into the Steelers' offense. They've got Matt Canada, who I think is going to throw the football more than what we've seen in Pittsburgh in recent years. He was the quarterback coach for Pickett last year. And this is a quiet storyline. Without Pickett improving, George Pickens won't. And I think it's both. I think Pickens is the perfect fit at receiver for this offense. He's confident. He's determined to make you pay. He's determined to break you down. And some of the highlights that we've seen, plus with Pickett now improving over the middle throws to Pat Freiermuth in joint practices, that wasn't there last year. That should allow this offense to do more outside the red zone. 2 total touchdowns a year ago outside of the red zone. They've had 4 with the starting offense this preseason. It's time to start buying in on the hype of Pittsburgh's offense with Pickett and specifically George Pickens, who, Chad, I hope you don't draft in fantasy. And I'm selling the hype on Anthony Richardson. I don't know why a guy that's started 13 games in college is all of a sudden able to not play in preseason game number 2 after joint practices all week. I'm selling Najee Harris within the Steelers offense. That's because Jacob Warren is legit with Jalen Warren, excuse me. I'm thinking about a former Vol. They say they're using Warren more in the preseason because they're preserving Najee Harris. No. 1 carry, 60-yard touchdown for Warren this past weekend. And here's the other thing. Harris isn't complimenting Warren. He was asked, what do you think about when you think of Jaylen Warren? He said he's productive, and then he went on to say he's efficient, and then started talking about the blocking.
Somebody knows they might be in trouble.
Yeah. To me, it's a Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott balance, and eventually we know who the better back is. And Chad, a storyline of last week that continued this weekend, the Panthers' offensive line sucks. Two young offensive tackles, and they're allowing pressure. They're committing penalties. And Bryce Young took more big hits this past Friday night on the field as the number 1 overall pick. He's going to be beaten up in 2023. He's going to be on the move a lot. And they added Adam Thielen. They have DJ Chark. But with Bryce Young running for his life and with his stature, you're going to have to get him out of the pocket anyway. But he hasn't had time to even get out of the pocket based on what this offensive line looks like. Storyline on the O-line in the Jets with the Jets has been dominating headlines. This one's bigger based on the investment that they've made elsewhere. And they've got top picks at the tackle spots that don't look like first-rounders currently.
No, and this is the one that could be detrimental to their star rookie quarterback's health. When you look at offensive line situations, this is top of the list.
Chad, coming up, Greg Sankey says at the top of the list for commissioner meetings next week, the future of the college football playoff format. That's next.
Do you feel as if, well, I'm pretty certain I know your answer because I know how I felt in college. I had to take, my major was actually chemistry at first as well. And I had to take a lot of ethics courses and different, I actually took a gender study course as well. And I felt like I had to tailor my papers a certain way to get a good grade. And what I'm noticing is across the country, that's the consensus. Even in the South, like where I went, University of Kentucky, we felt this way. And so I entirely agree with you that it's happening all over. About the backlash, how I mentioned, she came out and essentially used the argument of your argument was based in white supremacy. Have you gotten a lot of backlash, or do you just kind of get the name calling, such as being called a racist for saying freedom of speech should exist?
Isn't that crazy to be called a racist? Calling out being suppressed in school. It's so weird to see where people's heads are at. But yeah, there has been a lot of backlash, a lot of name calling, obviously. And the death threats are I'm gonna show up at your house. I'm like, okay, please do.
Yeah.
Like it's just a lot of that. And like I haven't had a ton of questioning of what I'm saying because they actually have no objection to what I'm saying. They're just like, you're transphobic. And I'm like, okay, but you have no real argument. That says a lot more about you than me. And it says that my argument is real and I actually am saying the truth and you can't even argue against that. So you're just going to call me a name.
And I love that you can acknowledge that because this cancel culture that we live in, they want you to think you'll be canceled. They want you to be scared of the name calling. But that really is all it is. And it speaks more to their insecurities than it does to yours. I saw people on TikTok, Olivia. I saw people coming for your eyebrows. Is that what they're going to resort to? And you're right. It's because they can't dissuade from your argument, which is actually really powerful. And it should boost your confidence. I think when people can look at a situation and take the negative, such as the backlash you're getting, which does suck. There's no taking away from that. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. It does take a toll on you. But if you can take that backlash you're getting and ultimately use it to fuel your argument, I wish more people had that same perspective that you have. But what about the positive? Have you received a lot of good feedback? Have you had a lot of doors being open for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the opportunities that I have had are just absolutely incredible. And the support from people like you and all these other speakers who have spoken up about, men in their sports. And the ones that really stick out to me are actually the parents of young girls who are messaging me and saying, I have 2 daughters who are running cross country just like you did. Thank you so much for protecting them. Thank you so much for sticking up for them in their futures. And I'm like, that's why I'm doing this. It's not really for me. It's for all of these other girls, and not even just girls, but for college students, for young men, like all of these people. I want to help them. I mean, America was built on freedom of speech. That's why we are what we are. And colleges are now trying to take that away. And like we said earlier, it's going down a bad path.
You know, Olivia, you sound like you're filled with hate. You sound just super hateful. No, how could anyone listen to your argument and say that that's hateful? I mean, I hear the compassion coming from your voice, advocating for what you're advocating for. It really is for everyone, all ages, all sexual orientations, even all gender identities. That's who you're advocating for, to be able to speak freely.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Fun and with her with you for Hot Mic across the OutKick network. Chad, Greg Sankey saying to ESPN in an interview that more change is needed now to the college football playoff and the structure based on what we've seen this offseason with realignment. Currently, there's a 6-6 model where you have 6 automatic qualifiers and 6 at large. What Sankey was pushing for, and certainly what Kevin Warren was pushing for with the Big Ten, now Tony Petitti, just make them all at large. Sankey was in favor of keeping the 4-game model, then push the 8-game model, where you have the 8-team model, where everyone would be at large. No automatic qualifiers. No conference champions are guaranteed a spot in the playoff. They went to 12 and they agreed on the 6-6 because when all this was being negotiated, the discussion of trust. Who do you trust? Do you trust Sankey? Do you trust ESPN? Do you trust the networks that are negotiating with the Big Ten? All of this was coming around, and you needed all the votes from the autonomous 5 that carried a lot of weight if you're going to change the structure. Well, now he's saying, right now, you put in bold letters that things are going to change, period, and we're all going to have to be prepared to deal with that change. And considered, it goes, the circumstances have changed. We need to reconsider the format. I'm not convinced that we need to reconsider the number of teams. I've been clear on that. I would have been okay with an 18 playoff with no conference champion access. That wasn't, if you will, politically tenable with the group. So they changed the model to 6-6. And then he goes on to say that based on the structure, they're going to have to discuss the automatic bids to what the Pac-12 is trying to keep together with the 4 teams they have remaining. Chad, I think we're going to see further expansion of the playoff, not less, and we'll have more of an agree to disagree. Here are the circumstances, so if you still want to keep your 6, we're expanding to 16 instead of 12. Because the SEC and the Big Ten know that they're going to dominate in those pockets of the top teams that would be qualifying or be eligible to get in as the top teams in the country.
I disagree with Greg Sankey here. I still think it's best to have some sort of automatic qualification into the playoff and then have at large and not just leave it up to everyone at large. Of course, things need to change because as of right now, starting in 2024, the Pac-12 doesn't exist. It's not a true conference. It's not a true league. It's 4 teams that are surviving right now, and they're not even operating. Is George Kliavkoff still there? I don't even know what it is. He's the commissioner, but they've got someone else, Oliver Luck, that's negotiating for them. And it's not a conference. So, yes, you need to change that facet of it. You can't have them as one of the 6 automatic qualifiers. He's right about that. There is not just a need to change, it's a necessity. They don't have a true conference, so they can't be a part of it as an automatic qualifier. But what he's advocating for is what he's always thought and what Tony Petitti with the Big Ten thinks. This is not a Big 5. This is not a Power 5. It's a Power 2. Let's get 6-6. The SEC and the Big Ten could just split this thing up. We're the best 2 conferences. Let's do it that way. The Big 12, okay, yeah, they added some teams, but who cares? What they want is everyone nationally to decide who the 12 best teams are, and those go play in the tournament. I understand that because that's the chance for you to get the most teams. Same would be said for the Big Ten. But if you want to be more like the NFL does have automatic qualification, like winning your division to get into the tournament. There needs to be some form of automatic qualification into the tournament. I'm an SEC fan. I like watching the SEC. It is the best conference. Their national championships show that it's the best conference. I'm also not for this, well, let's get rid of automatic qualification altogether and let's just let people pick the 12 best teams out there. So Greg Sankey's right. There is a necessity now to change the format because the Pac-12 is no more. But I don't want to go all in on just pick the 12 teams that you want in. And I do like the fact that there was, with this last format, some level of win your league and you get in. Because there are still other leagues. The ACC sucks this year. I think when you look at the depth of it, it's not good. The very top is good with Clemson and Florida State. But for the most part, that's a bad conference. The Big 12 is okay.
And we saw what TCU did.
But it's the SEC and the Big Ten.
No doubt.
There's no doubting the power and where it lies.
And you had Mark Keenum, who's the president of Mississippi State. He was the chair of this committee when they discussed expanding the college football playoff. And he put out there for vote 12 at large when they expanded. That was immediately shot down. So whenever they have the commissioner meetings coming up, Chad, next week, and then again in September in Chicago, the one next week, I believe, is in Texas. That's going to come up. Whatever Sankey is saying is going to be shot down, and there will be a compromise. And do you reduce the number of at-large? You do that, or automatic, you do that, or you increase the number of at-large as the conferences that are in favor of that increase in size. USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, going to the Big Ten the same year that we're expanding the college football playoff. Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC the same year we're expanding the college football playoff. That's why I think the playoff will expand if there's not an agreement or enough votes to push forward the line of thinking that Sankey's already putting out there with, hey, I was in favor of 8, now I'm in favor of 12. We agreed to the 6-6 format. That's not good enough because the best conferences are getting better. We're not going to have the best teams in. However you want to phrase it, I think there will be another compromise to push it further than where we are at 12. Is that good, bad, whatever? That's for another argument. But right now, the Power 5, the Autonomous 5, each get $80 million as a conference from the college football playoff. And this is what everyone's – the Pac-4 next year, not this season, next year, doesn't have an argument for $80 million for being a part of the Autonomous 5.
Not
but
at
that's
all.
in the bylaw of the NCAA.
No, the Pac-12 this year is actually a good football conference, which is crazy because this is their swan song, but it's going to be a good league this year. This is not what Greg Sankey wants, but here's what I would prefer. Get rid of the Pac-12 as an automatic qualifier. It's now a Power 4, not a Power 5. Have those 4 conference champions automatically in and take the Pac-4 spot and give it to the second highest ranking group of 5 school that's in the college football playoff ranking. I want to see another one of those teams in. And then you have the 6 at-large bids from wherever. But we know where the wherever is going to come from. It's going to come from the SEC and the Big Ten, first and foremost. So you're still going to get those teams in. Just take the Pac-12 spot and give it to another group of 5.
That's reading up on the Autonomous 5 vote, which the 5 major conferences. The question is not with the Pac-12 vote when they're meeting now. Kliavkoff he will be in these commissioner meetings. It's does the Big 12 and the ACC trust the version of whatever Sankey and Petiti will put out there to then vote alongside those two instead of the Pac-12 who's trying to keep things together and be a part of the 5. Because their vote's going to matter more than the Mountain West because of the Autonomous 5 in the bylaw of the NCAA. So you have to petition it better than whatever they did the last go-around with this.
There's no way. There's no one they can realistically add right now that would make them
I agree.
a Power 5. They can go get Boise State and San Diego State and some of the best of the American Athletic Conference and the Mountain West, that does not constitute a Power 5. Apologies to all those programs they could add. It's just not. The only thing you have is the seal of the Pac-12, which was a once proud and great organization and league that is no more. That's all you have. You can't slap an NFL shield on a Pop Warner team and say they're now in the NFL and they're going to go compete with the New York Jets. Doesn't happen that way. Just like you can't slap a Pac-12 logo on any school out there that's never been in the Pac-12 before and say, hey, now this is the Pac-12. These 8 additions are now the Pac-12, and we are part of the Autonomous 5. It's not going to work that way. So they're gone, and now you got to come up with another formula that takes the Pac-4 aside and then play ball with the other Power 4 conferences.
More compromise to be had. And next week's meeting, there will be things that come out of that will be headline worthy of the meeting they'll have in September with discussion.
But do you know who feels like they don't need a compromise right now? It's Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey. They don't feel like they're in a position where they have to compromise on much of anything, and they're not wrong.
But they have to, based on the bylaw of the NCAA and the structure, because of the voting power of the 5, not the 2, currently.
Yeah.
And so if others of the 5 agree to join forces with the SEC and the Big Ten on the vote, they would be voting with the confidence of leadership there moving forward. And they didn't have that last time. That's why we have the 6-6 model.
But make no mistake about it. The need and the push for the 12 teams just to be decided with no automatic qualifiers is self-serving. It's to get more of your conference's teams in. Because Greg Sankey knows exactly that's what would happen.
Yeah, with no champions guaranteed a spot for
no
sure.
Restrictions.
Chad, will we see no restrictions for running back Josh Jacobs in week 1 for the Las Vegas Raiders? He's reportedly going to show up. He's going to be at the opener against the Broncos. I guess the assumption is he's going to be in uniform and play, but he's disgruntled. For how long? Who knows? Because even with the Raiders, there are, the GM is saying to fans in attendance at practice last week, not going to be a problem in terms of getting Jacobs the extra million or 13 or 12 to 13 million, whatever was put out there. He needs to get whatever Saquon Barkley received. And maybe a bit more than that, because if I'm Barkley, I would have said, hey, I'll sign whatever you're putting out there for get money up front on the franchise tag, which is all he really received from the Giants. But there was no guarantee in that restructured tag that they won't tag him again. Maybe the Raiders come forward and say, we're going to match what the Giants did. We're going to give you the money up front instead of weekly, and we'll guarantee we're not going to tag you a year from now. There was discussion that they weren't going to bring him back in the middle of last season, and then you on this tear to lead the NFL in rushing. Phenomenal player for them, and with the expectations of what's on Josh McDaniels' plate and Jimmy G now taking over as the starter, it's put up or shut up time for McDaniels. They need Jacobs in uniform and ready to go, not this slow progression through the month of September.
No, you put him out there and you play him, and you hope that he's the Josh Jacobs of the end of last year. I mean, you've got him. This whole thing with running backs has been how they get used up and discarded in the prime of their career. Well, if that's what the goal is, then use him up. As long as he's there, he's got to play in games. He's of no value to you not carrying the ball and not impacting the offense in games. You've got to get him out there quickly.
And I like what was said from Andrew Brandt with us a week ago when we asked him about the running back situation with Jonathan Taylor. He said, does it actually benefit Jonathan Taylor to show up and lead the league in rushing, to have a 2,000-yard season? Well, I mean, it benefits him from a production. It benefits the team, but does it benefit his bank account? The answer is no, because they can just tag him again. If you take that off the table, if you're the Raiders, and you entice Jacobs to go out and do just that, that benefits the team. It benefits Jacobs, maybe not on the open market for another team, but you're not dangling that over his current contract situation like Barkley will have to face again, albeit with a 20% raise a year from now if the Giants want to tag him again, instead of give him the extension that he's banging the drum over that he didn't bang for very long after the Zoom call last month.
Well, going off of what Andrew Brandt said, he's right. There is no guarantee that going out there and crushing it and having a record-breaking season or your personal high or replicating what you've done in the past is going to guarantee great things financially for you in the future. But one way to guarantee that you're not going to help yourself is by going out there and faking an injury or not showing up for games and showing up out of shape and not ready to go. That's one way to guarantee you're not going to be helped long term. The thing for these players is the best thing you can do is go play while you're under contract, play very well, in hopes that there's one of the 32 teams that says, I'll pay top dollar for that. What I just watched from Josh Jacobs or what I just watched from Jonathan Taylor or from Saquon Barkley, I'll re-up for a big short-term contract for those guys. May not happen. In fact, I would dare to say probably won't happen the way teams view running backs right now. But certainly what's not going to help you is faking an injury or going out there and showing up out of shape and getting hurt and then not playing, because guess what teams are going to say about you when you're not producing? Look what they say about you now with how they pay you when you produce. Now imagine not producing. Not the way to go if you're those guys.
No.
And that's what I'm telling them if I'm their agent.
You enter the free agent market when you're not going to get the franchise tag, but it doesn't benefit you from the perception of other teams. And if you do well, you're tagged, albeit at a bit of a raise based on the way that the CBA is written. Chad, just briefly on the running back spot, Jonathan Taylor, it's a weird situation. So he's still on PUP. Nothing's changed, except that Jim Irsay is now saying that Chris Ballard, the general manager behind the scenes, is working hard to try and get the waters as calm as they can as they move forward with Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor on PUP will be on his way to Philadelphia for joint practices with the Colts and Eagles, even though he can't practice. He hasn't been activated. Coming up, let's get weird. Davey Hudson joins us. Plus, we have the latest on Michigan and Jim Harbaugh in 20 minutes.
Hey, Davey Hudson of OutKick here. We are at SEC Media Days 2023 in Nashville, Tennessee. We're going to go talk to some players, see what they have to say. What's the best purchase you've made from an NIL deal so far?
Tag watch right here.
Far.
Best purchase? I probably just give it back to my son for real. That's probably my best purchase every time.
Man, pay my truck off. Definitely.
A house. My wife and I bought a house, so that's been huge. Being able to save that money up and buy a house.
This chain here.
The best purchase? I'd probably say helping my mom out with school.
Ooh, the best purchase? Probably the shoes. The shoes I got on right now.
The best purchase I made, well, the best NIL deal I've had is free steaks from Marksbury Farms, so keep me fed and beefed up.
With it?
Purchase? Probably a new golf bag. Or recently I played TPC Sawgrass this past weekend, and that was from I used that money from a deal I made, so that's up there too.
Probably getting my sister through college, helping my family out a lot. That's probably my best purchase I've done.
Best purchase? Probably my my mom and dad anniversary gift.
The best purchase I've made? I got a yoga mat the other day, and that's helped me a lot. Just flexibility and everything like that, so probably that.
Best purchase?
My smile.
Best purchase? I would say my best purchase was having my school supply drive.
Landon, what is your favorite sports movie of all time?
Remember the Titans for sure. Sport movie, I say Love and Basketball. That's my favorite.
Got to be Remember the Titans for sure.
Remember the Titans. I mean, it's top movie ever.
Probably Longest Yard.
I'd probably say Like Mike with Bow Wow. Yeah.
My favorite sports movie? Remember the Titans.
Air Bud.
Perfect answer, actually.
I really don't know. I don't have one.
Movie? I haven't seen many, but does Sandlot count?
Favorite sports movie of all time? Probably Coach Carter.
Ooh, sports movie. Probably The Express.
Happy Gilmore.
The Little Giants.
Amari, what was your most favorite sports movie growing up?
Remember the Titans.
Barbie or Oppenheimer? Which one are you and the boys seeing first?
I don't know the other one, but definitely not Barbie.
Oppenheimer, gotta be. I'm not against the Barbie movie though. I tried to recommend it. I was shut down pretty fast.
Oppenheimer. Come on now. You don't need to ask me that question. Oppenheimer looks good though.
What's Oppenheimer?
It's a movie about the atomic bomb. It's the big thing that comes out this Thursday?
Yeah, probably that.
Oppenheimer.
Wait, what was the other one?
Barbie or Oppenheimer?
The opposite of Barbie. The opposite of Barbie. Yeah, so I'm not.
We're going to see Oppenheimer and then follow with Barbie.
Solid choice.
I don't even know what Oppenheimer is. I don't want to see Barbie, though.
Oppenheimer, 100%.
Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer.
Say a little bit louder.
Oppenheimer.
Oh, we're going to watch both of them. Maybe on the same night, but we'll probably watch. I think you got to watch Barbie first, just so you're not, Oppenheimer might be a little too intense, you know what I'm saying? So you warm up with Barbie and then you go to the Oppenheimer.
The second one. Oppenheimer.
Barbie or Oppenheimer? Which one are you and the boys seeing first?
Barbie.
Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on, Chad. Interesting decision for the Colts not to play Anthony Richardson. Ross Tucker earlier was like, hey, maybe it's the offensive line that didn't play, and you start to think about, well, we saw that play out for C.J. Stroud. It didn't go well. According to those that cover the team on a daily basis, that was not the case. They had joint practices with the Bears, and the Colts just said, we got enough work done with Richardson during the joint practices that he's not playing in the preseason game. But those that monitor and watch all these reps by him, and there are plenty of those now with him being the 4th overall selection, said he didn't really do that much in practice, in the final practice prior to the day off and kickoff against the Bears anyway. Peculiar. And now they're going to Philly for joint work. And the question is he going to play in the final preseason game after not playing in preseason game number 2? And also, this would have been his debut in front of the Colts fans. So if you are actually going to a horrible atmosphere for a preseason performance to begin with when it comes to starters, at least you have the fervor of, let's go watch Anthony Richardson in a Colts uniform because we're diehards. And instead, you watch Gardner Minshew take the first team snaps after the same week when he's named the starter of the Indianapolis Colts.
I don't get it. I don't understand if it's he got enough reps in the joint practice. What's enough reps for a guy that barely started in college? Define enough would be my response to that if I heard that in the press conference, because I don't know how you could say he's had enough reps. He's got partially won a preseason game under his belt. He's got some joint practices. You're trying to get ready for an NFL season with a guy who is wildly inconsistent in college, who's got all of the physical ability in the world that could be a transcendent talent in the NFL, but he needs experience. He needs game-like experience. Oh, where could we get game-like experience? Oh, in a preseason game that you don't play him in? I don't understand after playing him in that first game, announcing him as the starter, to not get reps in game number 2. It is a baffling decision by the Indianapolis Colts. Ross made some good sense with the offensive line part of it. We brought that up about with C.J. Stroud, what it looked like when he went behind his backup with his backup tackles in game number 1, and he's going to be the starter in Houston. So I can see that part of it, but I still think you start him and get him as many reps as possible because they're much needed for him, a guy who doesn't have a ton of experience coming in.
Yeah, and there are plenty of starting quarterbacks who aren't playing, plenty of future Pro Football Hall of Famers who are. Aaron Rodgers, he's playing this coming week in the final preseason performance for the Jets. He'll be making the start. And again, this isn't some, full half, 3 quarters like it used to be in the tune-up when there were 4 games and we had 2-a-days of practice and no joint practices. That's gone and by the wayside.
The old third preseason game where you get the full half with the starters, right?
Yeah.
Before the last one that was
practice
no one
coming out of the
in.
locker room, and starting a drive with a possession in the third quarter. Now, we don't see much of that anymore.
Past those days.
But we're not past really good quarterbacks with really good coaches deciding, hey, let's go ahead and get some snaps in. So when you start to look around at the headlines of who's playing and who's not, Chad, for instance, Jordan Love is playing in the preseason finale. Makes a ton of sense in Green Bay. The Colts, for instance, it appears that Richardson's going to play in the final preseason game against Philly, but again, who knows? But think about those who are playing, to play or not to play. Patrick Mahomes is taking snaps and playing, and you see a lot of reps with multiple wide receivers. Instead of counting how many reps and incompletions he has in camp, reporters are counting the receivers and how many reps they get in the preseason game with Mahomes. Rodgers is playing, as we mentioned. Russell Wilson has been playing in Denver. Josh Allen played, 2 or 3 drives this past week for Buffalo.
These guys are pretty good and pretty experienced.
Tua Tagovailoa is playing in Miami. We mentioned Love. Mac Jones is playing for New England. Desmond Ridder, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, they may be getting knocked around, but they're playing. Those who are not, and this isn't the entire preseason. Justin Fields played a week and a half ago, did not play this past weekend. Justin Herbert hasn't played. Mentioned Richardson. Ryan Tannehill hasn't played. Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield didn't play this past week in Tampa. The haves and the have-nots are pretty evident with that group, correct?
Yeah.
Super Bowl winners versus guys that need to prove themselves. And the teams that have those guys on the second tier are more worried about not having a second-tier player to replace the guy that is good, not great.
Baker Mayfield not playing's an odd one.
Kyle Trask actually played very well this past weekend. So I understand the injury risk concerns, but 9 times out of 10, it's a non-contact situation anyway that ends up ruining a season for a team. Not a hit in the preseason.
Yeah, and I know it's probably happened, and I'm just not thinking about it, but how many times is the starting quarterback knocked out because of a hit in a preseason game when they get out there and start? Like you said, it's the non-contact stuff, which could happen in a practice or happen anywhere. I just don't think that's enough. If you've got a starter that is coming back from injury, or you're solid with that guy, and he doesn't really need the work in a meaningless preseason game, I get it, not playing him. But for some of these other guys, and Anthony Richardson top of the list, I do not understand it.
Yeah, there are some headlines we don't understand as it is time to Let's Get Weird with Davey Hudson.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, talking now.
Guys, good to be back.
Good to be back. Good to have you back. Good to have you with us.
Davey Hudson is refreshed.
I was going to say it must be nice for you to be back with us also.
Very much so. You know, I enjoyed the week back home, but it's one of those things, with football right around the corner, just getting into the swing of things. I'm excited as we hit the ground running. So,
and this was a prosperous week away for your love life. Am I hearing this correctly? Hunt and I intentionally said we do not want to be spoiled with this story before the show. We want you to hit it with us on air.
Yeah, I thought it was a good week. Had a couple of dates. I figured I'd bring one to the table. This first date actually happened the Friday after my last show. So not this past Friday, but the Friday before. And it was interesting. And it's one of those moments, where when the date's over, you reflect back and you're like, should I have done this? Should I have done that? And
the answer is usually no to all those questions, typically, when you're asking them.
Yeah.
When you're thinking in your head, like, should I have done this? I'm saying, personal experience. Like, it's usually no.
Yeah,
so you're saying you made the right decision.
Yeah, if I'm asking, should I have done that after an interaction, the response in my head is typically, no, probably not.
Are you not the type of guy that, it'll be the time where you're taking a shower and then you just think of all the things you should have said in a conversation? You don't have
sure.
it? Okay.
With that,
I usually then text the person back afterward. This is what I should have said.
Well, for this story, it's interesting. So the girl, I had a nice time, but the best part of the date, actually, in my opinion, happened before the date even began. So I'm sitting. No offense, but I'm sitting at my table. The crowd's kind of getting in there. My date's running a little late, women. Yeah. So as
fashionably late, she's trying to make an appearance.
I see Brooke smirking over there. Okay. As I'm sitting there at the table, I'm probably either doing a mock draft or playing Tetris. I can't remember. But So we're waiting, and this gentleman comes over to me, and he introduces himself as TJ. So shout out TJ. TJ started talking about, he's a big fan of OutKick Hot Mic, how he enjoys Hutton, you and Chad, and everything you do, and that, as I've been on the show, he, I guess, enough to recognize me to come up and say, hey, so TJ, thank you for doing that. And
he's a season ticket holder.
Yeah, I was saying such amazing things, and my date still had not shown up, but then I'm sitting there thinking to myself, damn, I should have just told TJ to come back 10 minutes later. Say those things, all those things once she gets here. But
it would have been such a power play had TJ been 10 minutes later.
Was he just there? Did he work
And right
there?
as you said hello.
No, he was just a patron at the restaurant as well.
Now,
So-
it also would have looked like you set it up. If it was like right upon she arrives
Yeah.
and then he walks up, hey, you're Davey Hudson, right? I love your show. That would have looked to me, if I was her, like a complete setup. But yeah, he could have really helped you out being 10 minutes later.
You think it would have helped the date progress further? Like, you think it would have lasted longer than it did before you had to go back to Knoxville?
Are we going to get in this whole date, or are we going to?
No, I mean, that's honestly the highlight of the date, in my opinion.
Okay.
Wow.
You just didn't mesh.
Nice young lady, but we just didn't have that much in common at the end of the day. So she was originally from the Knoxville area, so we were able to talk a little bit about that. But as far as interest and things that go beyond that, there wasn't a whole lot there. But we had a nice conversation, but we realized this wasn't something that's gonna be moving forward.
When did you realize you might be off in the conversation? Was there a moment where you asked a question or she said something?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or did you go down a path where you could see it that she wasn't interested? When did it happen?
The big thing for me was just a lot of the CrossFit talk. I don't do CrossFit. Yes.
Did she lead with CrossFit talk? Was this
Oh,
the first thing
Was she
she
late
got
because
to?
of CrossFit?
It wasn't the lead.
Oh, yeah,
but
that's another great question.
Was she late because she was jumping over
No.
boxes?
Was she doing some power cleans?
No, I think it's just
and she was
Nashville
late?
traffic, which I will
Oh,
give
that's
almost
fair.
anyone a
Yeah.
pass on that.
Sorry, I've
with
been moving
how-
around really slow. These quads are on fire from all the CrossFit
Yeah.
that I had this week. Sorry,
All the
Davey.
pull-ups.
Probably sore from that. Like I went tubing this past weekend, and my body still hasn't recovered from that. So that's where we're at on the physical level. So
Tubing does make you sore, though. Even as a young man, if you tube hard, you're going to get sore from it. The hands. It's always the hands when you try to stretch them out. The fingers that are sore.
Chad may have a segue there for you based on that last sentence.
I was searching for one.
Oh, thank you, guys. Yes, so we're going to go right into the headlines. This one comes to us from Austria. So there is a spider that has an erection-inducing bite, and this led to a supermarket being shut down.
The supermarket shut down because the spider was biting the
Or just
customers?
on the loose?
Well, no one was actually bit by the spider. At first, they thought this spider, which they found in some fruit, it was on some bananas. They thought it was just a normal type of spider. But at some point, the fire brigade got called in, and they realized it was the Brazilian wandering spider. Now, how the Brazilian wandering spider made its way from, I guess, Brazil all the way to this supermarket in Austria.
On the bananas.
Yes, but still, that's a long way. The penny mark in Crimson Noon. So I'm sure I'm sure I nailed that.
It's probably right next door to where
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger grew
Yeah.
up, I'm sure. Do they grind these spiders up and use them in performance-enhancing medication?
No.
It seems like a pretty potent thing you need to get a hold of if the venom produces these
it's
results.
it's totally legal, unlike deer antler spray.
Yeah.
So
This Brazilian wandering spider spray.
They
could be
do
very
use the spider's venom to
It does
treat
something to
erectile
you.
dysfunction.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. So it is used for that. That's good.
So they say the Brazilian wandering spider has one of the deadliest bites in the world, can also cause hypothermia, blurred vision, and convulsions, and in some cases, hours-long erections.
So the hypothermia and blurred vision is probably why they shut down the supermarket, or the manager was just very much in need.
You got to feel really unlucky if you try to get bit by one of these things and you're the one who gets hypothermia from it.
They ended up shutting down the
Of all
supermarket
the
for
side
3 days.
effects. Of course, this one, the spider kills me, right?
But, real quick. So the one thing I wanted to say, and I might have just even did it wrong, but I looked it up just because I often get those confused. But do you guys know the difference between venom and poison?
I do not.
So
I thought they were one and the same.
Well, the hallmark of venom is that it can be introduced via a wound. So think of it being injected, such as someone biting you, like a snake bite, a sting, spines, or claws. Whereas poison is different because there is no wound involved, and it can be absorbed through the bloodstream via skin, inhaled, or ingested.
So saying poisonous snake or poisonous spider is incorrect. They're always a venomous snake or a venomous spider.
Yes. Because it would have to make its way through the wound.
That's good to know.
Through the bite. That is now that's a good fact of the day.
We're all about education here. I'm all about education. Davey, will we get an update on your second date of the week away
there
from
are
us?
multiple.
We will.
Tomorrow.
And, I've also got another story. We'll tease it for tomorrow that involves a catfishing. This one didn't involve me, but I'll just tease it for tomorrow. So.
No, the catfishing would have been if TJ was your date and you didn't know it until you got
I guess
there.
set up that way.
At the restaurant.
Just for research purposes and for the show, go get catfish now. Please allow someone to catfish you.
I don't think it would be that hard.
No. Not hard at all.
Especially through the dating apps these days. That should be pretty simple.
Oh, the apps.
Coming up, Chris Balas joins us.
Thank you, Davey.
Senior editor of the Wolverine, the very latest on Jim Harbaugh, the 3-game self-imposed suspension by Michigan, and Harbaugh's reaction. That's next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I just think the way Anthony Bass handled this was so sloppy.
Oh, I think it's perfect.
And what he reposted
he
and then how he did it.
He bent the knee and bowed. He was going to catch the ceremonial first pitch.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
When you're behind closed doors, when you're talking to plant managers, when you're having meetings, when you're with the team, was there an acknowledgement of any of this, an acknowledgement of the situation, the boycott, and then the doubling down about moving away from the fratty image?
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people. I'm pissed off about this. I never did it before in my life, but Trump is being cheated. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the final hour is here on this Monday edition. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us. If you're streaming live, listening live, we say thank you. Plenty of news, notes, headlines to get to from the weekend leading into this evening and tomorrow. And the headline that came out today was first reported at the Wolverine. Chris Balas joins us to kick off the hour, a legend on the beat for the Michigan Wolverines, and he joins us through the On3 network and at thewolverine.com. Chris, thank you for the time, man, and hope things are well.
Doing great. You know what? Always something going on when you're on the golf course, and today it just happened to be the Jim Harbaugh saga again.
Hopefully at the turn, at least for you, if that were the case. Hey, is this Michigan and Jim Harbaugh announcing a self-imposed 3-game suspension, or is it Michigan?
That's a fair question. I think it's Michigan, and I think Jim Harbaugh kind of accepted that, hey, you know what, if this is the course that we have to go to make sure that the focus is on my football team, then that's what we're going to do. I don't think he agrees with it. In fact, I know he doesn't, and he's chomping at the bit to basically give his side of the story, which the NCAA has said he can't do. So I think when it all is said and done, I don't think this is the end of it, guys. From what we've gathered, the NCAA has not agreed to make this the final say on Jim Harbaugh. He's got a couple of assistant coaches, Sharon Moore and Grant Newsom, that will sit out one game for something else, level 2 violations, and they said, okay, that's over and done. But this thing's going to drag on a while. And we're talking to people at Michigan today. They said, you know what, this could drag even into next year. We're going to have to see what happens.
Yeah, and I can't remember a statement from the NCAA like the one they released where they cited the hamburger, that this isn't just over a hamburger, that they're citing, I guess, some media reports, but also maybe what they've heard from Michigan in the investigation. Chris, I can't remember a time where I've heard or read the NCAA outwardly be that mad at a school or a coach as they were with Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. Can you?
Yeah, nobody can. And that's the funny part about this, is that they've kind of violated their own bylaws. I read an article from Dan Wetzel, a column, where he said, they're not supposed to be talking about this either. And that's exactly what they did. And I think really it's the hypocrisy that has a lot of people talking. If you look at what's going on around college football now and the pay to play, and while people are figuring out NIL, and here's Jim Harbaugh, and this was basically about an impromptu visit. A kid comes to campus during COVID. It was a shutdown so that the NCAA said there can be no contact. Jim Harbaugh basically saying, from what we understand, that he didn't recall the dates. They had a receipt for a hamburger, so that's how it became about a hamburger. But the interesting part about it is that he has remained steadfast in denying any lying. And I think that's something that Jim Harbaugh is going to stick to. If there's something that says that he has to admit to knowingly misleading somebody, I don't think he's going to do that.
Well, and help me with this. So he's not lying, but the NCAA is saying he's not cooperating either, which would be originally just a level 2 that's turned into a level 1. Am I reading that right? And if 4 games wasn't enough for the NCAA, is 6 the absolute maximum? Can it be more than what it could have been prior to this season for Harbaugh in Michigan next year, for instance?
Yeah, that's a great question, too. And in speaking with the people at Michigan, when they first approached them about this with the lack of cooperation, they were talking about a year. And Michigan said there's absolutely no way that's going to happen. Then we heard the 6 games. Then the proposed 4 games. Was in a swimming pool last week, guys, when that broke. And but we were told that wasn't the end of it. We were told that, hey, everybody's reporting that he's not going to be suspended this year. Don't be surprised if something still happens. And here we are today. So it would not shock me at all if next year at this time, guys, we're looking at Jim Harbaugh, if he's still at Michigan, and a lot of people are saying, hey, this is going to push him back to the NFL if he has this opportunity, could get 3 more games to start next year as well.
Chris Balas is senior editor at thewolverine.com, and they broke this story on the 3-game self-imposed suspension by Michigan on Jim Harbaugh not starting this season as the coach, at least on the sideline on game day. Is it the same as the NCAA protocol where he's still going to coach during the week and be with the team? It's just not on game day. And Chris is nodding there. I want to get your take on this, though. Why 3 instead of 4 if that is what they were negotiating to begin with?
That's the $60 million question, right? Everybody wants to know if they didn't accept the 4-game suspension, which is what we reported last week, then what's 3 going to do? And what Michigan said in their statement just a few minutes ago was like, we are hopeful that this will move the process forward. This is basically them throwing out an olive branch and saying, look what we're doing. Of course, you've got 3 games against Bowling Green, ECU, and UNLV that, game number 4 is the first Big Ten game against Rutgers. Not a great opponent, but an opponent that's played Michigan tough the last 2 years. So a lot of people are speculating that, hey, this is just the start and in the negotiating process all over again.
Are they worried potentially that if Harbaugh, he's flirted with the NFL the last couple of years, if he goes to the league next offseason, like Mike McDonald, who was going to have a show cause, now he's the defensive coordinator with the Ravens, that Michigan could be left with penalties through the NCAA and they're trying to circumvent that by this? Is that their thinking as well behind the scenes, but not publicly?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think what they would love, obviously, is for this to put this behind him and have Jim Harbaugh here for 7-8 more years. You look what he's done in this climate with this Michigan program, finally getting it to where they wanted it to be. So, and you see, guys, when they are dealing with coaches, you look at Tennessee, for example, it's really not the program that's going to get hit as much as the coach. But Jim Harbaugh, a lot of people are speculating that, hey, 2 years ago, guys, I know that he was gone had he gotten the interview that he wanted or the offer that he wanted from Minnesota. You know what? If he gets that offer this year, he might say, to heck with this. I'm done with it. A lot of people in that building right now are thinking the same thing.
Chris Balas is with the Wolverine.com and On3 Sports.
Well, and on that note of what you talked about with Tennessee and how clearly the NCAA, and I think it's probably the right thing to do. They're trying to go after coaches and not future athletes. Tennessee also got hit with the biggest fine in the history of the NCAA. A lot of what happened at Tennessee was COVID-19 violations. There were also the more salacious details about what was being done and the text being sent with Jeremy Pruitt. But a big part of that case was practices during that time, violation of the dead period because of COVID-19. That was said in that statement from the NCAA about that with Michigan. And because of that desire to go after coaches, am I wrong, Chris, in assuming when I saw that statement that if Michigan had not done something this year, and this 3-game suspension is a great start, I think, to mitigate what the NCAA was after, I feel like he was definitely going to get a full year suspension next year if they thought Michigan was being overly defiant. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I think probably, and I think they understand that. And you know what? When you see a statement like that, like you said, it's been 20, 30 years that we've been doing this, and the NCAA just does not talk about things like that. So, and Michigan, let's be honest, guys, has always been one to kind of bend the knee to the NCAA when it comes to these things. Oh, we're disgraced and we're embarrassed. Doesn't matter, how minimal they think it is or anybody else thinks it is. Michigan wants to err on the side of caution when it comes to these things. But at the same time, you want to appease your coach as well. The first thing we heard from the Michigan insiders was, hey, we're going to have coaches back on this. This is ridiculous. This is about a cheeseburger, so on and so forth. But now it has evolved to the point where I think they understand that the NCAA is serious. And no matter how seriously anybody else is taking this, Michigan's they've definitely had their attention.
Chris, why do you think Harbaugh wouldn't just agree to say that he knew about this if it's a level 2 violation?
Because I don't think he believes he did. I think what he probably said was, I don't recall that, or, I don't know the dates, something specific like that. And now for him to go back on his word, I think he would think he was lying to himself or lying to anybody else that, and saying, hey, oh yeah, I remember now. So that's just not who he is. If he feels he's right about something, he's going to dig in. He's a stubborn guy. There's no question about it. So that's just kind of his makeup. So it would have been easier, right, guys? This would have been all behind them. And they could have said, okay, we'll take the level 2 violation. You know what? Maybe we're off the road for recruiting for a week, but that's just not how he's wired.
What's the relationship like between him and Ward Manuel? And we certainly know the relationship between Harbaugh and the school president is at a level 10 with how things were treated whenever Denver was trying to make him their head coach this past offseason. Where's the relationship between the AD and head coach right now?
Great questions again. I actually talked to somebody about that today, and they said, I asked, is Jim upset with Ward? Is he upset with Michigan? And they said, no, he's upset with the situation. Now, it was icy a couple of years ago when Ward Manuel cut his salary in half during that COVID year after a 2-4 season and said, hey, you know what? We need better. We need to beat Ohio State. Now he's there, and I don't think he feels like he's paid where he should be at this point. This is not something he openly talks about, but behind closed doors, the people we know he talks to, he feels like he should be the highest paid coach in the Big Ten, and he's like, hey, I don't like being fourth. It's time for them to reward us for what we've done here and get my assistants paid as well. So I think there's a little animosity there, but over this issue, guys, I don't think this is something that's really going to separate these guys and get them at each other's throats.
Yeah, and Chris, forgive me, I'm reading between the lines here too, but the statement from Manuel instead of Ono, should I read into that? I would think Harbaugh's on board with this if the school president tweets something or releases a statement, because that's how it went down that he was coming back, and Manuel didn't even know about it until the tweet from the school president. If it comes from Manuel, do I just perceive that as Harbaugh's going to not say anything and he's pissed off?
You know what? He can't say anything. And he's said that over and over again. We asked him at Big Ten Media Day. He cannot comment on it. The only comment that Michigan can give is in response to, what they hear from the NCAA. Can we talk about this? Can we release a statement? And they, when they came out with the 3 games, that was basically on their own. We can assume, and we know that they are still communicating with the NCAA, but I don't think he's pissed off at Ward Manuel. I think he's pissed off at the NCAA more than anything, fellas. He understands everything that goes on out there. And he said in the spring, when we were talking to him, he said, you know what, if you compare us to perfect, we're never going to measure up. But if you compare us to any other program in the country, we are right there at the top. So I think that's what he's upset about.
Knowing this team, Chris, knowing the makeup of who Harbaugh's recruited, knowing him and his staff's makeup also, is this an issue that is going to unite or divide that team? Because we've seen it break one of two ways in the past when there's some level of controversy like this. How do you think it breaks for this Michigan team?
100% unite. And they've actually talked about that in some of the press conferences we've had this fall. Sharon Moore, the offensive coordinator, who is going to get a 1-game suspension. It will probably be that first game. So Mike Hart or somebody else, the running backs coach, will coach them. But he said, you know what? We love Coach Harbaugh. I just wanted to say thanks to Jim Harbaugh, unsolicited, for us being here and being in this position to be number 2 team in the country. We talked to Blake Corum, fantastic running back, said the same thing. I got coaches back. We all do. This is a team with great leadership, probably the best leadership out of any team that I've seen in 30 years. There are like 6 or 7 guys, fellas, that could be captains on this team. It is so tight and so tightly wound that I don't think there's anything that's going to separate them. And the good news is about having this bad schedule, fellas, if you're going to get suspended for 3 games, this is the year to do it, or last year, because going forward, as we know, with the expanded Big Ten, it's going to get tougher and tougher.
Chris, have you heard the team discuss Georgia or Ohio State more this offseason?
It's a great question, both. And they made it clear when they came out and said, you know what, we've got this Georgia drill now, beat Georgia drill. Somebody asked, they said, what about the beat Ohio drill? They said, wait a minute. That's never going anywhere. Beat Ohio comes first, beat Georgia because, that's the top of the mountain. We've beaten Ohio State 2 years in a row, but they understand completely that Ohio State is more than capable of coming into Ann Arbor and winning that game this year. That's still a very talented football team, arguably the most talented football team in the Big Ten.
And going back to Harbaugh's discussion on his team, I believe he said he thinks he has about 20 NFL draft picks worthy. Do you find that accurate based on your assessment of the team? And if so, I mean, they're setting records that are made to be broken, but teams that we haven't seen put that many in the NFL through a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, quite like we would with this one.
Yeah, and these are not going to all be high draft picks.
Right.
Look at Georgia, a few years ago, 11 guys or whatever, crazy numbers. I just saw, I think Pro Football Focus did something. They projected 17 picks for Michigan. Some guys are going to go 7th round, but there's a lot of talent here. Again, you've got the star power. You got the J.J. McCarthy's, the Blake Corums, guys like that. Will Johnson in the next year, he's a sophomore. He'll probably be a 1st-round pick. But yes, when you get down to the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds, you know what? Teams like Kansas City and Andy Reid love the Michigan guys. They take those guys, the character guys, in the late rounds too. So I could definitely see that happening.
Going back to the beat Georgia part of this and making them the target now, Stetson Bennett had something as a quarterback, right? There's no doubt about it. It wasn't the best physically, but he had something. Does J.J. McCarthy have that something that could be a national championship level quarterback?
He really does. You know what? He doesn't care how many yards he throws for. Last year, he didn't average that much. He just wanted to win. And that's pretty special in this day and age, guys. You know what? If guys aren't getting their numbers, they can go into the transfer portal, go somewhere, get $1 million and throw for 3,500 yards somewhere else. He is not that guy. And in fact, everybody's talking about him leaving after this year. We've talked to people who said, you know what? If they don't win a national championship, even if he's projected as a 1st, 2nd round pick, he could very well come back for his senior year. That's just in his DNA. When Jim Harbaugh talks about him being a generational quarterback, he's not just talking about his skill level. He's talking about a guy who absolutely leads these guys as a true junior, and he did last year too. Even when he was competing with Cade McNamara as a true freshman, he had, no qualms, nothing bad to say about Cade. He said, you know what, if I have to wait my turn, that's great. People were talking about him transferring, and the people in his inner circle said, no chance. This kid is True blue. This kid is committed to this program. One of the best kids, honestly, that we've ever interviewed here in terms of just who he is, in terms of his character, what he does off the field and giving back, stuff like that. He can certainly be that guy.
Chris Balas, the Wolverine.com senior editor, and the site broke the story with the self-imposed 3-game suspension for Jim Harbaugh from the university earlier today. And I know because it's time-stamped, it was on the premium message board first, Chris. I can only imagine what the responses were like there. From any fan base would be crazy on the message board. So I'm sure it's very entertaining.
Pretty deep thread at this point now, I'm sure. A lot of posts
yeah,
on that
how many
thread.
pages deep is the thread now?
It's we had 10,000 views, I think, within a matter of an hour. So it blows up, man. And you know what? Guys take stuff to Twitter and nobody cites anything anymore. And it's no big deal. Our subscribers know what we do. And that's why we're one of the biggest and most successful Michigan sites out there, fellas.
No doubt, man. Hey, great work here. Thank you for the time on short notice, and we'll catch up soon.
You bet. Thanks for having me, fellas.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris Balas there on 3 and the Wolverine.com.
Getting it done even from the golf course.
Yeah,
News
then
doesn't stop
last week,
even when you're on the golf course.
In a pool.
Yeah.
Living the life.
That's not, hey, he's just out there breaking news from a pool and a golf course.
Hitting them straight, hopefully.
It never stops. When news happens, doesn't matter how much fun you're having, Hutton. You got to report it. That's what they do there. That's great work
Huge
by him and his staff.
expectations for Michigan.
Yeah.
Based on the NFL talent, and now everybody coming back. Corum's back off of injury. You've got, of course, McCarthy. Great question on JJ there, too. Chad, coming up, Apple and ESPN.
They're going to run the world, run the sports world.
Do they really want to get into sports? They may have the opportunity. Some rumblings there. We'll discuss.
Just an opportunity and $50 billion. We'll talk about it.
The opportunity all collides at the perfect time.
$50 billion.
That's next, coming up on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.
The two biggest social media giants, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, are set to battle it out, and I'm here on Broadway asking people who they put their money on. Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, they're going to fight each other. Who do you think's going to win?
I think Mark's got him.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Because he's a man.
Okay, and Elon Musk isn't?
Oh, well, of course, he's got money.
Okay.
He's got money. Money, well, money's money.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg in a fight?
I don't know. I'm going to go with Musk.
Why?
It just seems like he's a little bit younger, a little bit smarter.
You just got a good feeling about him?
I got a good feeling.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Musk.
Why?
He trains. That guy's going to beat his
But Mark Zuckerberg is actually training jiu-jitsu for 9 months.
Not happening. Elon Musk all day. Elon Musk.
Why do you think?
He has no soul. I mean, I think he's definitely just going to no holds barred.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. I feel like he's stronger and smarter.
Oh, Elon Musk.
All the way? Why?
All the way. He's an animal. Think about it.
Mark Zuckerberg's been training for 9 months jiu-jitsu. You think Elon Musk can take him?
Yeah, I think he can take him.
Elon, that oh God, stop playing with Elon. Elon really do this out here, for real.
I hope Elon
Really? Why do you think so?
got better ideas.
Zuckerberg's like 5'7", 155. Musk is 6'1", 190. But Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, who's going to win in a fight?
Oh, Elon Musk. No doubt.
Why do you think so?
He's the GOAT. I've been seeing all the Twitter handles and all the talk, and I'm on Elon Musk's side. I'm ready for them to get in the WWE ring and then come off the top rope. That's what I want to see. I want to see a people's elbow to Mark Zuckerberg.
If one was more likely to be a lizard or a robot, who would it be?
Elon.
Okay.
I think Mark Zuckerberg will win.
Why do you think that?
Because I think he already trains MMA. So he's got like the prior experience and stuff. I mean, they're both billionaires, so they have the opportunity to get the best training. But I think Mark Zuckerberg will pull away with the win.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think so?
Because he's bigger.
Bigger, okay, but Mark Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Do you think that matters?
No.
Zuckerberg, he's part alien or robot, so he may have some secret powers that we don't know about.
I was going to say, is that an advantage? Does he have an advantage over Elon Musk then?
Yeah, I mean, if he, sheds his skin and becomes an alien and eats everyone, yeah, I think so.
Elon Musk is mental, so Elon Musk.
All it is just he's mental. He's mentally crazy. So
He just wouldn't care, would he?
Okay.
He'd just absolutely go for it. I think Zuckerberg would be a bit more refrained.
Okay.
If that should ever happen, which I doubt, but you never know, it'd be entertaining.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Elon Musk.
Why?
Because
Elon
my
Musk.
dad is in love with Elon Musk.
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to go with Zuckerberg. I mean, Threads just came out, so.
Who do you think would win?
Zuck.
Why do you think so?
Because he's not a real human. He's a robot.
So he'll use that to his advantage.
Yeah, and all the Krav Maga stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah. Who do you think would win in a fight, Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk?
Elon Musk.
Why do you think Elon Musk?
I think Elon's
He
smarter.
works with robots, so maybe he built a robot to fight for him.
But what if Mark Zuckerberg is a robot?
Oh, wow. Then I might have to change my answer.
Who do you think's gonna win?
Me.
Sixth and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Hunt and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, Apple, they're flirting with live sports. They may be able to own it in what would be a massive purchase, but one that could be available. It's only a matter of time if ESPN is with Disney or not. And the public comments from Bob Iger seem to point in the direction of not in the future and not so distant future.
Yeah, linear television not in Disney's plans as of right now, and that would be both ESPN and ABC, both Disney-owned products. Great story from Front Office Sports about what the future of Apple TV and Apple Sports could look like. And a big part of that speculation, this is from reporting, is that Apple is very much interested in purchasing ESPN if and when it is for sale. Now, how much would ESPN cost to Apple? $50 billion. Now, keep in mind, the Washington Commanders just sold for $6.8 billion, I believe.
Yep.
We're talking $50 billion could be the purchase price of ESPN and everything related to ESPN if Apple decided to make that purchase. So Apple has gotten involved in live sports, but they haven't truly gone all in. The most all-in thing they've done is MLS. $2 billion deal over multiple years where they have the rights to everything MLS. That's been the biggest live sports play so far for Apple. They have a Friday night Major League Baseball package that they have. They eventually balked at the Pac-12. The Pac-12 tried to get more out of them, and they said no to a certain point. So it's not as if, yes, they have the money. I mean, it would be couch cushion change to them probably for what they were going to spend on the Pac-12, but they're not saying yes to everything and just throwing money away. But would it be throwing money away to buy ESPN and have all of the rights that ESPN has bought, inherit all those contracts that ESPN has for major college football entities, the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, all of these different sports? Would it be worth it to Apple to have that? And what would it look like? I mean, there's tons of questions. Would Apple then run ESPN? Would they eliminate that brand? Elon Musk bought Twitter and has tried to remove the Twitter brand and make it X. Do you get rid of ESPN and put it all under Apple TV? Or now you have an Apple sports division and you put that Apple logo next to everything that they have sports-wise? A lot of questions that would have to be answered with this, but a world where Apple controls that much. We know they have the money to do it. I think their valuation is at like $3.2 trillion for the entire company. $50 billion is certainly doable if they wanted to purchase all of ESPN. The other possibility here is that they purchase part of it. Because remember, Hutton, there's been the reports out about ESPN wanting to partner with a pro league in some way. So not buying all $50 billion worth, but partnering with a purchase of ESPN with the NBA or Major League Baseball or someone else would also be a possibility.
But so going back to Sportico, who had this report last year, Disney currently is spending through 2027 $44.9 billion in sports rights. So the $50 billion evaluation, you would assume these contracts as well.
Yeah, then you're paying those on top of that.
That's right. So you've got, in terms of leagues, the NFL, they're paying the NFL annually for now what will be now 11 more years on the contract through 2033, $2.6 billion annually. They're paying $400 million to the NHL, $550 million to Major League Baseball. For the college football playoff, it was $470 million. There's only that goes through 2026 with the 2-year college football playoff expansion. And the NBA, they're re-upping that negotiation currently. The NBA has the 10-year agreement with the collective bargaining agreement with the NBA PA, and that just expired it expires after this upcoming season, I believe. So you've got those annual rights fees that you would be inheriting at roughly $44 billion that ESPN Disney is shelling out for that. That's the other thing. You go from MLS with the experiment there to inheriting all things sports. And then what's your piece of the pie with what you're owning in the future of college sports, which is unknown. But ESPN dictates a lot of this, where we're headed and where we are now, quite frankly.
What we're seeing more and more of, too, is the only thing valuable from a linear standpoint. So not from a streaming service, watch it whenever you want, binge watch this or do that. The only thing that's valuable are live events, and that is live sports for the most part. You can have another big live event that could also be profitable.
Yeah.
But in terms of getting over 1 million people to watch something at one time, however they watch it, via digital or on television or however,
Live.
The only way to do it is really sports. That's what we're seeing. There's the occasional comedy special or other things that are live, but live events, and that mainly consists of sports live, is the only thing that's valuable. This is good news for pro sports leagues that Apple would be this interested, right, if these reports are true, in spending $50 billion on ESPN to have live sports. But as we've seen, the most successful at negotiating these waters of media rights has been the NFL. They're also the most watched league professionally. But how do they do it? They go everywhere. They diversify. They go to multiple networks. They get everyone involved. What you don't want to see is an eventual monopoly on it, which Apple could afford to monopolize it, right? By the way, Prime Video, Amazon, another company, we should note that dove into live sports head first with Thursday night football with the NFL. But for the future of these leagues and college sports and everything else, you don't want just an Apple to own everything and then squeeze out a lot of things and eventually lower your price. You want to diversify for as long as you can, but you want to talk about a major global player in live sports, Apple would be that.
And you also want them involved if you are in favor of what's going to be a super conference. Because it's Apple or Amazon, Chad, that actually, I think, bring together the Big Ten and the SEC. Because at some point, with the rights fees where they are now, at some point, Disney either keeps ESPN and they cap whatever they're paying, or that goes down on how much they want in terms of the piece of the slice of the pie, or they pay a little bit more but not much. How do you get more in? How do you get everyone making money? You get Amazon or Apple buying in as well, and more than just a sliver, because that's how you add in Florida State, Clemson, Notre Dame, and others, and you have all the networks serve each other in that capacity. You have billions upon, what you said, trillion. That's insane. But the billions upon billions that they could bring to the table to completely revamp what we're seeing, which is also crazy to wrap my head around.
Well, and the best case scenario is all the normal players now, whether it be Fox, CBS, NBC, everyone that's playing it, that they stay in the game and, going after these sports, the rights fees for it. But also you have another major digital streaming player compete if Apple were to do this.
And what's the percentage that Iger's talking about?
It's Amazon. Right? Like that. What you want is that Prime Video and Amazon doesn't just say, well, Apple has live sports now. They bought it. What you want is Prime Video saying, we got NFL on Thursday night. Let's go get the Big Ten.
And
let's go get this. Let's go get that. Let's go get half of Major League Baseball, because you want those two behemoths battling it out and negotiating against each other for your rights fees.
And what you don't end up is Vanderbilt at Missouri going to streaming, and you have Alabama LSU on premium live TV, meaning free for all to consume. What you would end up with under the model, Chad, that you put out there last week is there's a good game on every platform in a window that benefits all. And keep this in mind, too. For all of those that say, oh, Thursday Night Football tanked in the ratings, and they went down. They averaged, 10, 11 million on Thursday night instead of 18? Amazon then stepped up. So did the NFL, by the way. Amazon stepped up and is now paying an extra $1 billion for a Black Friday game. Think about that. So that's also within the realm. It's like, oh, the ratings go down a bit, but you're getting enough subscriptions to where, well, this is going to work. We're going to own a day of the year. We're going to own a piece of the NFL, and we're going to have a great game. And then the NFL came back and actually gave better matchups and put more attention into their Thursday night product, where now you can have flex games, 2 weeks notice. Flex games for Amazon, not for ESPN, not for ABC, NBC, Sunday. That was already there. Now you can flex into Thursday night, and you can have a team play twice on a short week.
And this is the hopeful future for all pro sports leagues and colleges, that you get these two giants at play, and then you can make even more money. I was only slightly off, Hutton. The market cap for Apple is a measly $2.75 trillion. I said a little bit over $3 trillion, only $2.75 $1 trillion. So they've got the $50 billion. If they wanted to go ahead and buy ESPN outright, they could. But what's the better play, doing that or partnering with a league and going in on it in a sort of partnership with all the ESPN properties? But then you're inheriting all of their media rights deals also.
Well, and what the NFL is structuring right now with NFL Plus, they took Red Zone in-house. They're allowing a $15 a month payment or an annual payment where you're getting all of this premium content that you would have only received if you were like Comcast or Xfinity, DirecTV.
It was DirecTV before, yeah.
There was another Red Zone that was available through Comcast, I thought. Maybe I'm missing that. But you also had like the more premium content. NFL Network's now on NFL Plus. They're trying to.
Well, YouTube TV also has that, right? They just bought something. Sunday Ticket.
They've got Sunday Ticket, yeah.
Which is Google owned.
That's
YouTube,
right.
Yeah.
So they're trying to make their app of premium value by showing, look at all these subscribers that wanted Red Zone, so they can then package that and partner with another online outlet that they're looking to buy in and more or less buy NFL media, NFL.com, all of it, and have them distribute that on behalf of the league in a true like power arm and a power play. Is that potentially Apple? Is that ESPN Plus and what that model would be? Doesn't seem like that's feasible currently under the ESPN pay structure.
I just a huge branding decision that I'd be curious about is if Apple does this and buys ESPN, is ESPN the brand gone and it's now Apple Sports or whatever they rebrand it? Or do you buy it in part because you want the ESPN brand? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like Apple could just own it and it's just a part of the Apple corporation, but you keep ESPN logo, the branding, everything else, and not make it something new.
But
you're just now running ESPN.
Yeah, and you're comparing. I know it's a good comparison with what Musk did with Twitter.
Yeah.
But Twitter, I mean, if you bought Meta, you would have Facebook, Instagram, you would have all these properties. With Twitter, you just buy Twitter and you revamp it, and you've got that model under a new name. But if you have all the different spaces, pardon the pun with Twitter, if you have all the different properties that you would own under contract with you, I think you could rename it whatever you want. And it's still the same source of how we're going to flock to get our sports and our news. Like you still have Schefter and everyone else under contract.
You absolutely could. I would just, I'm
the
just
four
curious.
The 4 letters bring that.
What does
mantra.
Apple think about the ESPN brand? That's to me a very intriguing question to ask. They clearly like their brand. You see that logo and you know exactly what it is.
They own.
But would they want to do away? Because you would just do away with the ESPN brand at that point. Now you're Apple Sports. And you're your own division, or does Apple just run that? You know, when the Mars Wrigley corporations companies merge, Mars doesn't rename the Snickers because that's a pretty identifiable brand. You know, just as an example, would you rename ESPN, or would you want it, if you're Apple, do you want to keep that?
No, what Apple would do, Chad, and we know this, except for I don't know how your phone still works. They would send you an update for your Apple TV Plus app sports brand. It would probably, you keep it the same, whatever you want. But every year and a half, you're going to need a new charger, or they're going to come out with a new line of headphones or something. Their version of that for sports that you're going to have to upgrade and add to the overall platform.
Boy, wouldn't that be terrifying to think about that? The way they could control
They've
everything.
already doing it with my device right here. I can't do anything without it now.
Total mind control.
Computer in front of me.
Total mind control.
They've got it all.
It is pretty remarkable that my phone is still so serviceable after all this time
It is
and
a
all
relic.
these updates. And I get all the automatic updates. You know, overnight my phone will update and I've had no big issues.
This has never happened. Chad's phone outlasted his car.
Oh, absolutely. This thing is going to be in the Louvre at one point. I'm going to
Can we auction this?
There's going to be an archaeologist like Indiana Jones going to pay me to put this in a museum when it's still working 5 years from now.
Someone's going to clean their money and
vehicle
launder.
I just purchased probably won't work in
phone.
5 years, but this will.
Wait until you see what a NBA employee on the way out has done. That's next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I just think the way Anthony Bass handled this was so sloppy.
Oh, I think it's perfect.
And
I mean,
what he reposted and then how he did it.
He bent the knee and bowed. He was going to catch the ceremonial first pitch.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
When you're behind closed doors, when you're talking to plant managers, when you're having meetings, when you're with the team, was there an acknowledgement of any of this, an acknowledgement of the situation, the boycott, and then the doubling down about moving away from the fratty image?
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people. I'm pissed off about this. I never did it before in my life, but Trump is being cheated. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
Been a fast show today. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us. Streaming
you want Monday
live.
to go fast, Hutton. Well, you never come into a Monday and say, I want it to go really slow today. I want this Monday to feel like 3 Saturdays, right? You come into it and you say, I want it to go fast. And now it's going fast.
Chad, Joe Mixon, maybe it'll be a very slow season in the locker room for him because he's blacklisted a few of the media members. Not outlets, he's clarified this a bit.
For reporting arrest records?
For, I guess, their reporting or maybe even some, opinion, if asked to give it, on the ongoing, what was ongoing legal situation that's now, he's been cleared. He's not facing any charges now. But I'm thinking to myself, I have seen this play out personally, like Pac-Man Jones years ago refused to talk to media. And then all of a sudden...
all media at that time, right?
All media. And then all of a sudden, randomly in like week 10, he decided to speak because he wanted to get whatever version of PR out there versus whoever was playing well. And Mixon just took a pay cut. He's not blacklisting all media, but just those that are there on an everyday basis. And when I saw this headline, I'm thinking, okay, talk to whoever you want to, and he's required to be available. He doesn't have to answer the questions the way media wants him to, but he has to be available at least once a week. The team has to make him available. But it's not like we're talking about Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase here. And it's not like Mixon's coming off a 2022 season the way he was coming off of the 21 season. And that was the year when it was a run-first offense, or at least the perception was it was going through the backfield, then through the pass game. And then midway through that season, Chad, it flipped. And they went on that run to the Super Bowl. And now they've got the 3 wideouts to pair with Burrow that are phenomenal. So unless all of a sudden Mixon starts becoming the storyline, no one's going to miss his comments in the media until he needs his message out there from those that are there on a daily basis, including Ben Baby, for instance, is the Cincinnati reporter for ESPN. He's not speaking to him, but he's clarified that he will speak to ESPN. Well, ESPN has been there covering the Bengals.
Well, it's no big loss to the media, okay? He's not a great quote. He's not someone who's going to give you a ton of information to begin with. So what this does, unfortunately for Joe Mixon, and now that you're there for the season, I don't know why you do this to yourself, this confirms the notion that many have that he's kind of an idiot. And he's got the arrest record in the past to prove it. And now he does this. I'm going to blacklist you. You're blackballed because you reported on me having problems with legal issues. Well, that's what happens when you have legal issues. So I get being upset by coverage if you feel like you've been wronged in some way, but be brief with them. Be curt. Don't give them much. Show that you have a problem with them if you want, but answer the questions. Don't, go about a blacklist like your James Spader on the old NBC show of media members and make it public. That's just stupid. But again, we're dealing with someone who's shown to be pretty stupid.
Yeah, it was
in his decision making.
It was a menacing charge, a misdemeanor. He was found not guilty, and then came back and said disrespectful comments from certain media outlets, and then clarified to media members after going and playing ping pong. Chad, I thought about you with Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, that's.
He said he had to go work out and left, and then minutes later reemerged in the locker room at the ping pong table.
I didn't know that he took. I didn't know they took a job in Cincinnati. Nathaniel Hackett, when I heard that. Joe Mixon also punched a woman in the face. Let's bring that up as well.
Yeah.
That happened in 2014, and people saw it and broke her nose in 4 places. As I'm reading the story right now, so great. You can be mad about your, not guilty on menacing charges, but that still happened too.
Also, more than disrespectful in that case. Chad, fair or foul based on the former employee of the NBA who still had access to the Facebook account for the NBA. No one had removed them, he or she, from the account.
Or them.
Yeah, he or she.
Never know with pronouns these days. Could be them or they, too.
Yeah, and the NBA account on Facebook, luckily there are those taking screenshots. Here's what it read. How do I log out of this? Haven't worked here in weeks. Anyway, the NBA overextends its social media employees greatly to the detriment of their health and social lives for a salary of less than $50,000 annually after taxes. I worked 14-hour shift without breaks at times. Shout out, Adam Silver.
That's my favorite part.
We don't get health insurance until 90 days on the job. That's silly, isn't it? Glad I resigned. No need for a job to get in the way of your happiness. Donate to mental health causes. Peace.
This is
very respectful based on the fact that they still had access, and it's not, it's not trolling. It's putting out their side of the story without putting out some fake news or bashing someone that would certainly stir up further headlines and further apologies.
Yeah,
from
it's
the league.
also, look, this person is, an activist for mental health. When you sign off with donate to mental health causes, difficult for the NBA to get too mad and try to seek legal damages against you or anything. Say, hey, look, I'm just trying to get people to deal with their mental health issues because you caused mental health issues for me with those 14-hour shifts. I love this. In terms of people who kept an account open with a company and then blasted off on that company from said account, this is one of the more clever attempts I've ever seen at doing it.
This person could have changed the name of the account.
Didn't get, didn't start throwing out a bunch of cuss words, wasn't, overly profane with it, was smart in their approach to health causes. I love it. I'd like to interview this person, quite frankly. If we can track down whoever did this, I want them on Hot Mic. That's got to be the next step.
Yeah.
I want to talk to them about this.
How do they know who to remove?
This also could happen to anyone. I would caution media outlets or anyone to go too hard at the NBA for this, because you may want to take a long look in the mirror, because there's a lot of people with your accounts and you are one drunken tweet or Instagram post away or screenshot away from being made a fool as well.
No doubt.
So, I try to live by a glass houses type approach, right, to certain things and not go overly critical on certain issues when you know that, your house may not always be the most clean on that.
The Nathaniel Hackett approach.
This is one where...
Not the Sean Payton approach.
If you don't like the NBA, exactly. If you don't like the NBA, you're sitting there laughing and you're going to write, negative things about it and tweet negative things. I would just warn you, a little bit of caution on it, because this could happen to you. Any league, any team, any media company out there, what happened to the NBA in this post could absolutely happen to you as well.
Chad,
beware.
The lawsuit, details have emerged, by the way, on the death of former NFL quarterback Dwayne Haskins, former Ohio State Buckeye. The AP obtained information from the lawsuit that's been filed that shed some light on at least the allegations of what happened whenever he was killed on that South Florida highway while trying to jump across traffic and was hit by a truck. 24 years old last year when he died. And according to the lawsuit, the allegations are he was drugged, robbed, and extorted before being struck by the dump truck while he's standing on the highway. And so therein lies the questions about why all this took place as it's alleged. It contends all the factors contributed to collision. That the truck responsible for hitting him was speeding, operating carelessly, over weight limit regulations. The lawsuit suggests that the rental truck that Haskins was using had a defect, that he didn't know he was running out of gas, and then also how it was handled from the state highway department. But I would also just go back to drugged, robbed, and extorted, and what's going on behind the scenes with that compared to the very little that we know, other than he was killed on the highway in Florida, and instead of calling for help, decided to walk across an interstate with a passenger in the seat as well after running out of gas. Bizarre circumstances and disturbing, quite frankly.
And the rental car deal with the gas, being out, and when you didn't know it was going to happen.
But how would you know to allege all this in the lawsuit? You see what I'm saying?
I'm assuming the attorneys for Dwayne Haskins' estate did their research and did their digging on it and found something with the vehicle, testing it. I don't know.
But drugged, robbed, and extorted is also mentioned.
The only way to know is if he's like messaging people throughout the night about something bad that had happened, right? If you're in communication saying, hey, these people are asking me for money, or this happened, or I don't know. Now, honestly, I see these charges and I'm thinking this is going to be very difficult to prove unless you've got security footage of known criminals that have done this before. You know, if there's like a gang of criminals that have been known to drug and extort people and have been charged with it, and you see them entering a convenience store together or leaving a bar together or entering the hotel together, and you've got all of this video evidence of everything that's happened, or you've got Dwayne Haskins' phone records where he's calling and he's been recorded saying I don't know. I don't know how they're going to prove all this, but they're claiming it, so I'm assuming they have some level of proof that something was up. Regardless, just a complete tragedy.
Yeah.
This whole situation is terrible.
Michael Irvin is headed to Undisputed. They've have him under contract with FS1, so he'll be a part of that show. And then moving back to ESPN and talking football, Monday Night Countdown, this is for Pro Football Talk. We know that some of the core pieces of ESPN were on this show. Susie Colbert, for instance. Steve Young. They were part of the layoffs that took place a month and a half ago. Booger McFarland also will not return for the upcoming season of ESPN's Monday Night Countdown. And the host is going to be Scott Van Pelt, and he's replacing Susie Colbert. You have Ryan Clark and Marcus Spears, who will also be on the show now. And you have multiple appearances that are expected through Larry Fitzgerald and Alex Smith. So this is how they're replacing big names or longtime analysts with those that are already under contract within the company now doing more. How much more can Scott Van Pelt do?
He is a hardworking guy. He's got a lot of responsibility at the mothership at ESPN. Scott Van Pelt's terrific.
He's great.
Susie Colbert was great, too. Of all the people, this is no knock at Susie Colbert. I feel like almost anyone you put in that spot is going to be criticized because people just liked Susie Colbert so much because she was such a pleasant figure on television for so many years.
Yeah.
And everyone could kind of agree on Susie Colbert.
No matter the news.
Yeah, being someone who was good on TV, could think on her feet, was good at delivering the news, was good at asking questions.
Handed to DeMar Hamlin.
Yeah, great at
anchoring that.
Great at that job for so long. So anyone that steps in there is automatically going to get criticized, except for Scott Van Pelt, who's also like the Susie Colbert of dudes.
Yeah.
Is universally thought of as pleasant,
well put,
funny, Like, that was the old school television is you don't want to go on there and piss everybody off. That's become television. But for years and years, it was, I need someone who makes me like them.
Chad?
I want to watch them on television, and I want them to be pleasant, and I don't want them to offend me. That's Susie Colbert. That's Scott Van Pelt. And they're going from Susie Colbert to the male version of Susie Colbert. To me, Scott Van Pelt.
Both described the same way Clay would describe OutKick when he launched. Authentic, funny, smart.
Yeah, I would say so. And also just pleasant, both of them.
And he's going to anchor SportsCenter from the Monday Night Football location with Ryan Clark.
Are they going to get?
Adding,
I like that they're not having all the former players on the field at once, like being uncomfortable and swaying on the field next to each other. Sort of the "what do I do with my hands" approach. Because all those shows, when they get on location, it's a bunch of dudes like wanting to play. I feel like that play the game that can't sit still or they're just constantly moving.
They had a good balance on site, though. Maybe Van Pelt only wants one or two.
I'll miss Steve Young.
Back at it tomorrow. Hope you'll join us 3 o'clock Eastern for Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.